Let's see, page 13.
We're back in session. Welcome back.
Where are we at? Oh, the air's still.
So we are still on the draft circulation element, and we are beginning, I believe, on page 12, goal and policies of the roadway system, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so
Goals and
Just-
policies roadway systems. Okay, page 12.
carry on.
That's page 13 for me.
Oh,
So the earlier version, and I'm sorry for confusing things a bit, I moved a bunch of policies out of this section, Goal 2, and put them under Goal 1, as I felt that they were more applicable to general circulation policies, not just roads. So you see from 2.1 down through 2.13, those are all moved from goal number 2 to goal number 1. So just to clarify that.
so if we, as we go through those, if you didn't catch that when we were going through, when they were in 2, but now they're in 1, we can always go back and look at 1, all of the 1s instead of the 2s, if that makes sense. Yeah?
When we went through those.
No, I know, but since some of the goals were all, the policies were in C2 previously,
Yes,
Peter put them in C1.
right.
So if you didn't comment on them because you were looking at the version where they were still in C2, I'm just saying if there are some that were moved and you didn't have a chance to comment on it, we can always go back.
But you're right, we did go through them all.
Right.
This,
I was using the current version, so
Me too.
I'm
You're good.
I'm good to see too.
Okay, well, I'm good too, but I'm just saying, if there was some kind of mix-up in your own versions and notes, we can certainly go back and look at those. So we're on goal C2. Any comments?
I don't have any on the goal.
Not on the goal.
All right, moving on then. So whoever's got one on 2.2 or 2.3?
2.3,
Okay.
I'm just not sure this is written correctly, because if I understand it, the policy would be that LOSD would be acceptable in community areas, and LOSC would be, or better, is what's acceptable on county-maintained roadways. Is that right?
Right.
yes.
Okay, that's not what this says. It says that you can't reduce the minimum level of service in community areas to D, but D is acceptable. And the same thing is true with the county-maintained roadway. So shouldn't it say road impacts created by new development shall not reduce the minimum level of service below D,
You're right.
and then go on and say, or below C on county-maintained roadway?
That was a good catch, Kelly.
Yep.
And the and LOSC should see, or below LOSC. And with that, I think it's fixed.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
And I don't have anything else until we get clear to 2.9 on page 13.
Anyone else before then?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, this is just grammar. The new sentence at the end of 2.9, where it says, "New benefit basins may be formed by the county when determined necessary to accommodate new growth and is needed to equitably distribute, et cetera." The "is needed" should be "are needed," because it refers to basins as a subject.
Right. That was a test, you caught it.
Yeah. He tried to slip it over on you, but you were good. You were really good,
It was a
Kelly.
test, right?
It was a test. So far, you're 2 for 2. See if you can find that other one.
I missed it. And I don't have anything else till I get to 2.16.
All right, anyone else?
2.16.
All right, let's move on.
Okay, it's really a question. It says the county shall only accept new roads into the county-maintained system when such roads are built to county standards, benefit non-project related traffic, have a funding mechanism in place for road maintenance, and have a forecasted acceptable level of service. The question I have is, it refers to this requirement that it have a funding mechanism in place for road maintenance, and I had thought that when the county accepts roads into its county-maintained system, that the county funds the maintenance,
Right.
not the developer.
I have the same note,
I did too.
and I note that Peter has written a paragraph down here attempting to address, I guess, all of our concerns, but I'm not sure I understand the note.
Okay. This was, and I really think we probably need Public Works staff in here to explain this better. So maybe we could defer that, and if we take a break in this afternoon, I can see if Robert or someone is available that might explain their position on this policy.
Debbie, all right?
So if we could punt on this temporarily.
In addition to the portion of it that Mr. Wooster brought up, when such roads are built to county standards, if they're not built to county standards, they don't get accepted.
Right.
So, okay.
That's what it says.
He's on a roll today.
Yeah, he is. So shall we wait and see if we can get,
Yeah, let me see if I,
we'll get
this
Mr.
language that
Packinger or someone here to provide?
came from Public Works.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right. So moving on.
I don't have anything until 2.18 on page 14.
All right, 2.18.
This has to do with encroachments onto state highway.
Oh, I'm sorry. You have I have 2.17, and it relates to the funding mechanism that we were just discussing on 2.16, because if you're going to discuss 2.16, do it in light of 2.17, because this is a case where a funding mechanism would need to be in place.
Right. So when Public Works is here to discuss those, we can look at the contrast between those two
Yeah.
and
It
explain.
makes sense for 2.17, but not for 2.16.
Okay. So to 218, Kelly?
2.18.
9, what was your one?
2.18.
Okay.
The first sentence says, encroachments onto state highway, i.e. arterial, corridors and collector roads outside of community areas shall be minimized. Okay, first problem I have with this is I would think that Caltrans ought to be the one dealing with encroachments on the state highway corridors, number one. It may be in the interests of county residents to have encroachments on the state highways. And if Caltrans wishes to resist that, and sometimes they do, then they will. But the county should not be, in my judgment, taking this position as a county-wide policy. That's number one.
I also had concerns for that because of the way that Arnold and Murphy's are laid out. I mean, that is a pretty serious statement and would affect development of any sort, even just a single driveway going in, because it's going to be considered an encroachment.
Well, and again, this is outside of those community areas, so we've got more urbanized areas, you're going to see those driveways. So the
You're traveling
state
along
highway
55.
design, all of the highways are considered expressways under Caltrans lingo, which is minimal amount of encroachments onto it. So if someone's designing a project, we would want to see maybe one encroachment and all the access to that off that internal road, rather than a series of encroachments onto the highway itself, so that we have the free flow of traffic and fewer potential for accidents, that kind of thing.
But there's nothing but private lands between communities, connecting Arnold to Avery, from Avery to Hathaway Pines. Those are all private lands that,
Yeah,
and those are outside of community areas, but it would have a serious impact if we have this in our general plan.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's prohibited, it's just that when we're designing projects, they're to be minimized. So minimized does not mean prohibited.
Well, but why should the county be taking that position as a policy? Caltrans will certainly take care of that end of it.
Because we're going to be the approving authority on any kind of development project. They will comment, and they're a responsible agency in that they have to issue the encroachment permit. But if we approve a project, and the classic example is the AutoZone project we looked at, a year or so ago, where we said, this is appropriate here. Caltrans didn't want it, but we said it's appropriate.
That's not
Because-
outside of a community center.
Now it's outside of the community center, I'm just using that as an example of where the county approved the project, despite the fact that Caltrans really didn't want to issue the encroachment permit. Now, there were some other, nuances with that project that sort of differ from this specific policy. But if a project were proposed outside of a community region, what we're saying is, let's not have a whole bunch of driveways, 5-acre parcels with driveways fronting the state highway. Have one encroachment so that that highway that people are driving 55 miles an hour isn't suddenly constricted by a lot of turning movements into individual driveways. Have one intersection and then the lots coming off of that. That's essentially what that policy would mean.
But that depends upon the project, upon the topography, and it's going to be project specific. This is a blanket policy of minimizing encroachments on the state highways, and I continue to believe that anybody who doesn't think they're going to get it by Caltrans is going to have to design it in a way that they think will get by Caltrans. The county should not get in the middle of this, essentially taking sides with Caltrans on this issue in advance.
To
That's
me,
my
it's
view.
really a safety issue. I mean, I see it as it's either, Caltrans or no. If it's just as easy to have one access onto the state highway and you're traveling back and forth, and you know that, I'm coming up to this congested area where there's like one access versus a series of driveways every, 300-400 feet. I think it's a serious safety issue, and I think it is important to have a policy where, given the terrain, given whatever, that if you can provide 1 or 2 access points versus 6 onto a state highway with high limits, I think it's important to do so.
So, Peter, would this, is this going to apply only to, say, a housing development where they're putting 50 homes somewhere? They want them all coming out onto one arterial drive?
Or 1 or 2, you might
One
have.
or two.
Or
It
could
depends.
this, because of the way that this is worded and doesn't reference development on this particular piece, would it also be if somebody just wanted to build a home in that section?
No, because they already have that access right.
A lot of those lots don't
And that would be
have any-
ministerial.
Okay,
If-
because a
if-
lot of those
if a-
don't
If
have
a property
accesses.
fronts a road, either county highway or a state highway, they have a right to get an encroachment. Now, they may have
Okay.
to design it in a certain way so it's safe with sight distance, but we can't preclude someone from getting access to their property if they have abutting rights to that road.
So this is just.
So
for
this would,
the-
and again, as a general plan policy, this applies at either when the county makes a decision or when we're approving development project, discretionary development project. It would not apply to an individual homeowner or property owner who wants to build a house. they still need to get an encroachment permit, but we're not talking about, large scale, or, that's different than a development project where someone is subdividing land and would be creating an internal road system. Or even a commercial development, rather than a whole series of driveways. Maybe you have one driveway and then a better internal circulation system within the commercial project. Now, maybe we could, the second sentence is more general in that it refers to all higher classification roads, and rather than to specify the state highway, we could modify this so it's talking about arterial and major collectors or something like that.
Well,
So
let
it
me go
doesn't
to
really
the-
matter, it becomes more of a county design requirement that, collectors and arterials, we don't want to see a lot of individual driveways on. It causes problems.
Well, collector roads include Hogan Dam Road, Frico City Road to Sheep Ranch Road to Avery's. A lot of roads on that map that have relatively light traffic. And there really shouldn't be any problem if somebody wants to build a driveway onto those roads. So this looks to me like a solution in search of a problem for those roads. And I quite frankly would prefer to delete the entire first sentence.
The phrase higher classification roads includes corridors, highway corridors, and collector roads, does it not?
Yes, although it probably should be specified because it's not defined anywhere. I think maybe the way to do it would be encroachments onto arterial and major collector roads. Outside the community area shall be minimized.
Well, the problem with that is, we learned this morning that these collector roads don't bear any, the classification doesn't bear any relationship to reality. There are classifications that are done to get federal money. And so when you use those classifications, when you are talking about real-world things, like can somebody put a driveway to it, it causes a problem. That would get you Frico City to Sheep Ranch included.
We could limit that to the major collectors. And arterials. I mean, it still has Jesus Maria Road and Rock Creek Road.
Yes.
And again, we're not saying it's prohibited. It's when we're looking at a major project, or we're looking at a project, you minimize it. It may mean it's appropriate to have 1 or 2 or 3 rather than 20. That's minimizing.
But if you use major collector, you're picking up Sus Maria Road, Mountain Ranch Road all the way from San Andres to Railroad Flat, Pool Station Road in its entirety, Rock Creek Road in its entirety. To me, it doesn't work to use that classification because it wasn't designed for that. It was designed for funding purposes. And it doesn't correspond to what's on the ground or the amount of traffic on the ground or really anything else other than an attempt to get federal money.
I'm struggling with it because I think that the way that it's worded and the way that this is in here, although we're sitting here today and looking at this, this is a long-term plan, and we won't be here when it gets used against somebody. And the way that that's worded, I could see that being used against a project down the road and in the future, and none of us are here to say, no, when we put that in here, we intended it to mean. So somehow the language either, I mean, I kind of liked removing the first sentence too, or we need to clean it up a little bit so that it's not, it can't be used in the wrong direction because it reads too broad.
Okay. How about this as a language change? My favorite word, practical.
Ugh, hate that.
Where practical, new development shall utilize internal site roadway design, shared access points, or frontage roads to reduce encroachments onto, and then you name the classifications, or just be general higher classification roads.
And what would you do with the first sentence?
I would
Yeah.
eliminate it. Because it is contained, the concept would be contained within this new one sentence.
So where practicable, new development shall utilize internal site roadway design, shared access points, or frontage roads to reduce encroachments onto arterials and major collector roads.
Yeah, and you don't even really have to, yes, that's how it would read, but you really don't even have to talk about shared access points or frontage roads. You could just, designs designs are designs. There's all kinds of designs you could do this. Maybe shared access points and frontage roads are the limit of what you can do. If so, then fine, but
I think encouraging people to do this is okay. Shared access points, frontage roads, I don't know that we needed to reduce that completely because, I mean, that would be a good goal to work towards if possible.
it's fine, but I don't know that you want to, I think by definition, we are talking about areas outside of community areas, but maybe that's not true. Maybe you have a development within a community area.
Well, maybe within a community area, we'd have the same concern. If you've got,
Yeah.
I mean, the issue we had with AutoZone was, they're concerned about a whole bunch of driveways, and even though we had a lot already, we felt that one more would not be, damaging to the flow of traffic, but we wouldn't want to have 3 new encroachments at that location. So whether it's inside or outside of the community area is probably, doesn't really matter. It
Doesn't
still
matter.
makes sense to limit encroachments.
But the one new sentence,
So I'm okay with, I mean, I think the
And-
wording that you're
and-
proposing, Mr. Tuno, works fine.
right, and in some cases it is completely impractical. If you've got a major arterial and you've got a parcel of land and you are dividing it up this way to where every parcel is fronted to the road, it might not be, and the topography is such that you really can't build a frontage road and a one driveway.
Well, I think any of these policies, unless they're very specific, shall, they're very specific, sort of imply that, you have to use some practical sense to it. And that's just the application of general plan. Every place is unique, and there's always going to be exception to the rule. And that sort of goes without saying. But I understand the concern that, sometime in the future, some other planning commission or board might interpret the plan differently, and that's their prerogative. I think that the language proposed gets to the concern that we had. It's not just related to state highways, it's, any of the major thoroughfares. And any development, whether it's in the rural areas or within the community areas, we probably want to limit the number of encroachments for the safety reasons that Commissioner McLaughlin pointed out, and just, traffic movement in general. So.
Is there a concern that the short list of things you can do may be not complete? Should you add something like, or other design features, something more open-ended as to what you can do to reduce these encroachments?
I'm sure there's probably something else out there that we haven't thought of that is there. We could either add that, or we just utilize design features to reduce encroachments without having that list. So any design features that...
I had a different comment, so go ahead and hash that one out first.
Okay. I understand minimizing, and I understand what you're talking about, but you are talking about putting a no-growth policy on if you're adding in community areas and limiting that because we don't have outside of the highway. That is our towns. So as you're coming through and minimizing those encroachments, you've stopped all growth by minimizing those encroachments for anybody coming in the community areas trying to put one in.
But again, it's not prohibiting them, and where there's the only option of putting a driveway in, that's what they're going to be. But if it's a larger piece of property, let's say it's a commercial development that's got, 50,000 square feet of commercial space on a number of buildings, and you've got the option of having one encroachment, leading into a parking lot shared with all the businesses,
I'm good with
or
that.
cutting it up into 5 different, businesses, each one with their own driveway,
No, that's common sense development. I get that.
That's what this is
I
saying.
think, well, it is and it isn't, because it's saying that encroachments onto state highways, and then we changed it to where practical new development, utilize internal site roadway design, shared access points, and frontage roads. Well, I don't have any frontage roads in Arnold. I have businesses and land on the highway. And if you go through Murphy's, that's what they have too, and everything in between, even going outside of Murphy's, because Murphy's taken some growth outside going down the hill. And it's pretty restrictive for our area. I understand when you have little community towns that are off the highway, but I mean, for me, this impact in my district is huge.
Well, Lisa, I thought we were talking about deleting that first sentence.
We were, but then he said maybe we should add even in communities, because, correct? Didn't you say we should add the word in
the
communities
phrase outside of
too?
community areas, I still think that's a good idea, frankly. And it's certainly not a no-growth prohibiting development type of policy. It's just saying where development is proposed, minimize the number of encroachments. Not say prohibit encroachments, it's just say design it so that you're minimizing it.
Earlier, you used the word limited, and I think that's where I went, whoa, 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 whoa. You're going to say first one in wins, and then everybody else is out?
No, not.
And that's how
yeah.
it came out on
Yeah,
me.
there's no way we could do that. Legally, we could not prohibit someone who has access to the highway to have access to the highway.
Okay.
Caltrans or the county would have to grant an encroachment permit. But we don't have to grant 5 of them if a proposal is made where one would work. That's what this policy is saying.
Okay.
Let's minimize it, and nowhere is the word limited here. Maybe I use the term limited in discussion, but
See, I
where
took
one or
it
two works.
literally, Peter.
Yeah. Where 1 or 2 works, let's use that.
Okay.
And we'll leave the design up to the designer of the project. We're not going to tell them how to do it, but if they're proposing something that's, not safe and has more encroachments than are necessary, we'll say this is not a good idea. And our general plan says we want to minimize. So you go back and redesign this so there's only 2 encroachments rather than 5 encroachments. That's what this policy says. And that's where we would then have the authority to tell someone, says, this is not a good design. You need to go back and revisit it.
Okay.
Shouldn't we include reference to an impact? If a proposed new development is in an area where the encroachment isn't too, is to a road with very little traffic on it. And you've got a very small development, by the way. You've only got a few parcels that you're actually talking about. And so the one driveway per unit, per dwelling, let's say, doesn't impact the traffic much at all, because the traffic it's a very, minor road. Very, very low traffic road, and we have a very small development, so we only have a few driveways we're talking about. Do we even need to go here?
Yeah. We
So,
still need a
so
few
is there a
homes.
threshold that we should be talking about?
I don't know that the policy needs to be that specific. I think we start getting down in the weeds on, where does this policy apply to every project? I don't know that we would ever get through developing the policy language. I think there's, where practicable, provides that level of flexibility. It's not practicable, it's not reasonable, it's not, to require someone to build a frontage road on Sheep Ranch Road in order to accommodate a 4-lot parcel map.
Right.
No, we wouldn't necessarily do that.
And the other, I think, since we were talking about long-term planning, and it might be a small road today, but it might be a larger road, 20 years from now, and it would just be good planning in terms of as that, the number of automobiles increases on that road through population growth, that it does have a shared access, so it is less dangerous, doesn't, maybe not today, but 20 years from now. If it's makes good sense to do that and it's feasible, and why not?
I agree. We're supposed to look ahead 20 years and more if we could, and by limiting the number of access points, encroachments.
So how would it read? Does someone have a,
Well, I tell you what, let me go back to,
or did
language
Kelly,
I've
did you
seen.
have it?
if we were to include and reasonable, so it would read like this, and it's only one sentence in my interpretation here. Where practical and reasonable, new development shall utilize internal site roadway design, shared access points, or frontage roads to reduce encroachments onto higher classification roads.
Actually, it was onto arterial and major collectors.
Okay, that's what I find. New language there. Onto arterial, what was it?
Arterials and major
collectors.
collectors.
Arterial collectors,
Roads.
Is that
collector
what you had?
roads.
Arterials and major collector roads.
Is
And
that
major
what you had, the
collectors, okay.
same language,
Now,
basically?
If there's the possibility of other tools, as Mr. Wooster was suggesting, that we should slug in there, in other words, access points, shared access points, frontage roads, or other design,
Features.
Features.
Yeah.
I don't know what they would be.
Yeah, I don't know what they would be, but who knows?
Well, and it doesn't exclude other design features either, from being used if they weren't listed.
I could live with that. Do you want to add that back in?
Sure.
No, oh.
No, well,
It never was in.
yeah,
We're
it's
just
not
not
back
putting
in.
it in.
Yeah.
Well, it's up in the first sentence, though. where
But the
it-
first sentence is gone.
I know, but I was asking if he wanted to put that verbiage back in on the design features.
Oh, I think.
Design features never a part of this.
Where did I see that?
I think I mentioned it earlier.
And I wrote it
Verbally.
down. Okay.
Kelly?
So the option would be to list those and add other design features, or we could just simplify it and say utilize design features to reduce encroachment.
I think just simplifying it to design features, there are known ones, and somebody might come up with something else, we don't know. But
Well, I kind of like the list because it gives people an idea.
I like the
Yeah.
list too.
I do not think that it works, though, to limit this to arterial and major collector roads, because when you look at the map, there's a lot of roads this should apply to that aren't included. I mean, division between major collector roads and minor collector roads on figure CIR1 does not make sense for this exercise.
What if we use the term high-volume roads?
Something that makes sense, that would be,
Just a general term?
yeah.
Yeah, because there are situations where an internal subdivision street ends up becoming a feeder for, a couple hundred lots in some cases, if you get a large subdivision. And if that road is planned to be stubbed out to serve future division, pretty soon that road really should have been designed as a collector road, internal collector road. It's not going to be part of the county-maintained system, but it still should not have a whole series of driveways.
Right.
So,
I think we're good with high volume, yeah? All right. Do we need it read one more time? Yeah, and that says yes.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Go.
Where practicable, new development shall utilize internal site roadway design, shared access points, frontage roads, or other design features to reduce encroachments onto high-volume roads.
Now, the only difference is,
Wow.
I would
Like traffic.
suggest the word "and reasonable," where practical and reasonable, or practicable and reasonable.
Isn't that a duplication of wording? Because practical and,
Yeah, I think it ends up sort of being somewhat redundant.
yeah,
I mean, I understand where you're getting at, that there could be some place where it's not,
Okay,
I think practicable probably serves.
I'll buy that.
Okay, good. All right, we're moving on.
Just a second, let me get my
we moved
pages.
so fast earlier.
Huh?
We moved so fast.
Well, it
earlier.
was, background, basically.
Yeah, now we're getting down to the.
Yeah, we're
In the
back
weeds.
in the weeds. All right, so but keep, in the spirit of moving on, let's keep going.
On 2.19, my note that isn't the requirements of 2.19 embedded in 216 and 217 because they both refer to county standards. Is this?
Well,
is this-
4290 is a state standard, though, not county standard.
It is,
But
because
counties
our
aren't-
state, but the reason this is in here is to sort of meet a demand by CAL FIRE in their review of the general plan. So just for, sort of redundant, but,
It's a box.
yeah, we sort of check out a box, and that way
Okay,
we've satisfied their needs, and
That
we
satisfies
can move on.
I'm good with it there.
And let's see. I don't have anything else on until later.
I have an issue with 2.22, which says no subdivision or parcel map shall be approved unless there is legal access to the subject property. And I'm not clear what legal access means here, and I'm also not clear on why the county cares.
And I have I could probably answer this, but I'm going to let Peter do it. But my question is, why is it here? That was my question.
This,
Why is it here in circulation?
because this is a really big issue.
No, I understand it's a big issue, and I think it's probably addressed, and I don't know if we did it. It seems like a while ago in the land use element. But I think it's important. It's an important issue. I just don't understand why it's here.
Because it does involve circulation in a lot of ways, because we've discovered that in our county, we have a lot of parcels that do not
That's
have
true.
legal access. It has become a very big issue because we've allowed homes to be built on those properties. And when we started looking into those homes and found out they didn't have legal access, originally when our county maps were recorded, they weren't given legal access, but our county issued permits for people to build on those parcels, which has created even a bigger issue. So they don't have legal access, but we gave them permits to build, and this is going back years. But now we have people applying for permits to build. They don't have a legal access. Title companies have tried to work to find legal access for them and can't. Insurance companies have canceled their policies based on no legal access and no proof. So, and they can't get loans. So
But the county has a policy now, I believe, somewhere in that it won't,
it's not going to allow
It's not-
new building,
No,
but it's
I
not
mean-
going to address and fix people's previous issues.
well, that's, that's the policy now, is that you're not going to approve a project that can't demonstrate legal access, but
Well, I would not, I think that as far as in our circulation element, this being in here is important, because if they don't have that legal access and we don't state, you're not going to be able to put a subdivision on there, I think it's important. People need to be looking that up and finding out if they have legal access
I
before they
agree.
go through
It's
all
an
the
important-
efforts of development.
it's an important statement. I'm just not sure why it's here.
Well, it's a road circulation issue.
It is.
And so and that's why it's in the circulation
Okay.
element. We could have some similar policy in land use, it just seemed more appropriate here. I think to get to Mr. Wooster's question is, why is it the county's interest? What Lisa says is true. My experience on parcel maps is, over the years, the requirement for identifying access has evolved. And what was assumed to be a public road has turned out to not be a public road. We have a lot of non-exclusive road easements that have different meanings as you get into the rights of other people to use that road. It was at one time thought to mean open to the public, but the county's not going to maintain it. And then we later found out through some court cases that, oh no, it's non-exclusive, as it's more than one person, but doesn't mean everyone.
Right.
And so this just is a statement of policy that we're going to require it, so that when we rewrite our subdivision ordinance, we can clearly state that here are the standards you need to provide to the county to demonstrate the ability to subdivide your land and utilize whatever road system you're proposing to use. And there's a lot of documentation needs to go with it. Is it necessary to be in here? Probably not. We could still put language like that into our subdivision ordinance. We could still require that as a condition or as a prerequisite to approving a map. But I think that's probably helpful to have it here, so it's very clear up front.
I think it's
part of the
important for
overall-
developers looking at our general plan to look at that and see that and do further investigation.
All right,
That's
I
just
mean,
my
it's
opinion.
a good reason.
I don't have a
I'm
feel
just
for it.
wondering.
You've got
Yeah.
specific knowledge because
That
it
makes sense
affects your area.
to keep it here.
Well,
I want to hear what he has
It's
to
a
say.
mystery to me.
since- as to see what he says.
It looks like
It
land use
affects
to
your
me.
area quite a bit, Kelly.
well, the phrase legal access is not defined. And what do you do with somebody who doesn't have a recorded easement, but who says, I've been traveling this road for 20 years
Then it
across
becomes-
somebody else's
But then
property?
it's their responsibility to show that they have a prescriptive easement or whatever.
Okay, now, that may be correct. And how do they show that?
That's a civil matter
Yeah.
that we wouldn't take up
That's
to our
right. And
general
so what you
plan.
have
File
done-
a quiet
what you have
title
then
in
done-
court and get it proven up.
It becomes a civil matter.
What you have then done is you have required a lawsuit
Yes,
before
but
somebody can get a building permit.
right, but how could you
Well,
provide
this is only
a,
for subdivision, not for
Right.
building permit, for subdivision.
This is for building and development. So
Parcel map or subdivision.
want to add that language?
and how would
It's already
you,
in
how
there.
how could you approve a project like that and say, yeah, go ahead, and then they've got no legal access? You
Well,
know,
it seems to me that that's their problem. And that,
Well,
That's right.
Here's the other issue. If we approve a project that requires off-site improvements, and the developer doesn't have the interest in that road in order to make those improvements, the county has to condemn that land and acquire that easement for them, or those improvement requirements waive. That's a provision of state law in the Subdivision Map Act. So if we say you have to, widen that road leading to your property, and it's more often the case of maybe there's an existing smaller road and they need to widen it to accommodate their project, there's only 50 feet of right-of-way, they need 70 feet. If they can't if they've gone through all the process, everything they need to do to try to acquire that, and the landowners are unwilling to grant them additional right-of-way, then the developer can petition the county, and we have a certain time frame with the act to initiate eminent domain proceedings to acquire that right-of-way for them. If we don't do that, those off-site improvement conditions are waived. And so that's another reason why we want to make sure that if, the road improvements are something that's necessary for that project, that they have the legal right. But I think it gets to a broader picture of just, someone subdividing their land and they don't have the rights to do so on that road. I think that brings the county into question. We've approved that project, and the county might end up being sued by the intervening property owner. Well, you approved this project on a road that you had no right to allow this additional development on.
Or sold the lots in the
So I think
subdivision.
it's between
promise of
the
a
two
road.
property owners to resolve that.
Right.
And if it means going to court to resolve that, that's
can go.
okay, but we want to be out of it.
That's right.
We don't want the county's taxpayers being spent to defend a lawsuit by someone who says you've approved a project.
I agree with all of that. I'm still having an issue with it, though, and I'll tell you why. If you approved a map or whatever these, parcel map or subdivision map, and you made it subject to the landowner acquiring whatever access may be necessary for this, that would be fine, so far as I'm concerned. When you have a policy like this, and somebody makes a mistake and issues a parcel map or subdivision map, approves one, and you have this policy, and guess what? It isn't there. Now you have the problem you've identified in spades, because you have now taken the responsibility to not approve something that doesn't have legal access. If you limit your approvals in such a way to get the county out of that little issue, it seems to me that would be a better way to go. Having said all of that, I do think that this is an issue where I would prefer to hear from county council on what really is best for the county on this, because I have not researched this. I'm not giving any legal opinions on it. I just have a concern about taking on essentially this obligation with whatever consequences might flow if somehow it doesn't get followed correctly.
So
And you may not even have to do that if there's a better way to handle it.
if somebody came forward and they wanted to acquire more property to have legal access, and I don't care how they do it, they buy it, they work out their legal easement. At that point in time, then they could still come forward to this county and prove legal easement, and this would no longer to apply to them. But what this is doing ahead of time is telling people, hey, before you go through and you do a whole bunch of reports and spend a ton of money, make sure your legal access is good. If it's not, then they have to go to those steps to acquire it and then come to the county with their legal access. I mean, that's the way I would want to see it being done. I mean, if they came
Yeah.
forward after acquiring the land, getting some adjustments done, then that's the time to come forward with their development. It's not saying they can never have it, it's just saying until they acquire their legal, and that's how I'm reading it. I just know that we've had issues in the past that were pretty serious in the county. It caused a lot of problems for our county, and there were a whole lot of hearings over that.
Well, I think I can recall at least one instance where something like this did happen.
Yeah.
And the person who didn't have the access but thought he did went after the county on the grounds it should not have approved the parcel map or whatever they approved. But to me, this makes the problem worse, because it does two things. It does give notice to people that they need to look at the legal access issue when they're going to develop. But it also imposes an obligation on the county to do just what this says. Don't approve it unless the county's satisfied that there's legal access.
How is that a problem?
Yeah, how is that?
Because you have taken on an obligation that perhaps you didn't otherwise have. And then if it doesn't work, if at some point one of these things does get approved, and it turns out that there's a problem with the legal access, the county is on the hook.
Well, yeah, if they approved it and they had the policy and then they didn't provide it.
Not if you say, we're approving it, but it's your responsibility to take care of legal access, and we are giving you no representations, warranties, or anything else on that line,
So
along
you're
that line.
saying I'm not sure what you're saying. Are you saying, what would you'd say it's go ahead and approve the subdivision or the parcel map, even though they don't have legal access, but recognizing that you're supposed to, and
And it is not the county's obligation to
it seems
get
like
it
you're
for you.
leading people on like on a path of disillusionment, because you're saying, yeah, I mean, to me, that's worse. You're saying, go ahead, well, hey, yeah, we'll take your money, we'll approve your project, good luck if you don't have legal access and can't develop it.
Well,
Or again, I think it puts, even with that policy in there, it puts the county on the hook once those 5 lots or 4 lots are sold, and then people don't have access to build on it. But, I'm fine with the language. I think it's important. I think it's good. Now with, I think it makes sense to be in this section. What do you guys think? And if you want to have county council weigh in on it, I'm sure we could, or...
Well, you can have legal counsel weigh in on it if you want, but from my previous experience and knowing what we've gone through in the past over these specific issues, and it's not just one, it's multiples of this having happened in our county, I want people to have that notice. I want them to secure legal access before they go out and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on preparing parcel and subdivision maps. I think legal access...
Or even before that, bind the property.
Okay, how about this? If Mr. Woosters wants the developer to prove legal access before the county even touches this thing, is that right? Okay. So, no subdivision or parcel map shall be considered unless the developer has proven it has legal access to the subject property.
That's the same thing it
It
says.
is. It's just more words.
Well, I like...
No.
You like what?
I think
Puts the
another way to
responsibility
do
on
it
the
would be this.
That
If you want to put notice on people and so forth, and I understand that. Why can't you say it is the responsibility of any applicant for approval of a subdivision or parcel map to acquire and demonstrate that there is legal access to the subject property?
Okay, so then that's going to go back into getting legal here to interpret that, because the way that this happened before is that our county issued those permits without verifying legal access. And the way that you're wording it is basically, as you're saying, the developer, it becomes their responsibility to do that?
To acquire it and demonstrate that they have it.
To acquire and demonstrate. But, so we would go ahead and issue a permit knowing there's no legal access, the county? Or it's not
No.
our responsibility to
No.
investigate it
No.
whatsoever?
No.
No,
No.
Could you say that again,
Yeah,
Kelly?
please say it again.
It is the responsibility of an applicant for approval of a subdivision or parcel map to obtain and demonstrate to the county that there is legal access to the subject property.
But you
can
don't
leave
say-
out the word obtain, because if they demonstrate it, they've got it.
That's true.
But there's no there. It's their responsibility to get it, but why? There's no reference to approval or consideration that you had said for their project through the county. There's no.
Fine, keep going with read your sentence again, please.
Let me write it down.
How about, to Jeff Fahn's concern,
If you just preface
I got it, Kelly, go ahead.
prior to consideration by the county,
Something.
prior to approval of a parcel map or subdivision, the applicant shall demonstrate legal access to the subject property.
Something like
That
that.
I can
I
go,
could do that.
I can do that.
I don't think we have to go to legal now. It's going to go through the process,
That works.
It doesn't really.
and if there's a flag that comes up for them, they'll
I'm fine with that.
I like that. Read that again, Peter, so I can write it down.
I'm writing it down while I think of what it was. Prior to approval of a subdivision or parcel map, the developer
Or
The applicant.
or applicant shall
I'm
demonstrate,
reading Colleen's, go ahead.
demonstrate legal access to the subject property.
Good. Actually, that's almost worded better than what was there. Because now you're not going to issue it until they show it. And the proof and the burden's on them, not you.
Yeah.
And we want to take that burden off our county.
Okay, good work. Moving
Yes.
on. Anything else on 232425?
No.
2.24. This is on the bypass in Valley Springs. Am I understanding correctly that this would be a bypass that would connect 26 and 12?
I
Yes.
think it's like line, off a line, what is it, line?
It goes, I
Line-
can just,
Well, there isn't
Yeah.
there's an undefined
Alignment?
alignment, and it's shown on the revised figure 1,
Right.
in the
and
inset.
The dots.
sort of a dotted line. It doesn't know exactly where it is, but it's something that we're saying that, yes, we want to have this. At some point in time in the future, we want to
We
see
do?
a bypass.
Really?
yeah.
After what happened to Angels Camp?
No, this is, let me,
Talk to me.
I can
'cause this
speak
is
to
your-
it.
Good,
I
go.
think maybe a lot of meetings down our way on this one, and other people that were at those meetings can speak up on it. Let's see, which map is it shown on, please?
It's the revised figure 1.
And
It's
can
at
I-
the back of the package.
Before we go into your background, Kelly, what is your question?
Yes, you're right.
What, do you have a question about this? So
Well, my
if so,
question-
maybe
my question
Commissioner
is
Tuno
why-
could address that in his,
Okay, the question is, let me find it again. It says the county shall work to acquire this right-of-way, but wouldn't the right-of-way wind up being used by a state highway? And so why is the county going to spend a bunch of money to acquire this right-of-way for the state highway?
Well, there could be any number of reasons or methods to do that. If we're approving development where that is, we could require that they reserve that right away as a part of their development, not necessarily go out and buy it. We could, and the reason why it's here as a policy is that we don't have an actual alignment design. This gives us the direction to say, this is important as far as our long-term circulation plan, this and the wagon trail project. And that, you know, as activities occur, we'll continue to work towards developing that right away. It may be that we'll go through a exercise with Caltrans to identify what the technical term is, precise alignment or something like that. There's a whole series of different steps you need to go through. Ultimately, it's the counties, Caltrans sees this as a local need. It's not something that serves
the state.
regional transportation in their mind, even though to some degree it is regional transportation. But the reality is, it's the county's responsibility to ensure that development doesn't encroach on that right of way and that we work towards acquisition. Now, it could be that state or federal funds are used to do that. It doesn't mean it's all coming out of our pocket, but it's the county's activities that will identify where that right of way is in cooperation with Caltrans. As
Okay,
far
it
as
doesn't read
overall
that way.
design
That was a
criteria, that
great
kind of stuff.
question.
It doesn't read that way. It reads as if the county's going to acquire it. And so I don't have any problem with the concept if you've described it. I think it's a good idea.
So like through development, basically, or something.
Shall identify an alignment.
Well, I think you want to have it fairly broad in light of what you've said.
Something in the way
So
of preservation.
the county shall work to facilitate the acquisition of a right-of-way. Because I would think Caltrans is one's going to wind up with it.
Well, I don't think they're trying to do an acquisition on this. I think what they're doing is say, we're not going to let people build where we think the right-of-way is going to go. So when we try to acquire that property, we don't have people that we let build.
I understand, but if they're working to facilitate the acquisition of a right-of-way, that
could
would
do that.
include
That's right.
not letting somebody build on it. I'm just trying to get away from the idea, as I read this, that the county's going to work to acquire it.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion, facilitate the acquisition, because it does sound like they're just going to go out and buy it.
And
Yeah.
that, then the broad scope of identifying
Yeah.
where it's going to be, how wide it needs to be, what's the design criteria, and then, making sure that development doesn't occur right where that's going to be, all those steps. I mean, that's good language.
But, I mean, I can give you a more explanation, but if we don't need to, we
I don't
don't
think we
to.
need it.
However, there's really two different projects here. As I understand the discussion of these, the two different dotted lines here are two different projects. They both have kind of the same impact, but they can be done independently of one another.
True.
The dotted line from 26 to 12 going to the west is independent of the other direction. There's a bunch of land that's kind of landlocked in there that has the potential for development and is consistent with this idea that we take the city centers and we grow them out this way. And because Valley Springs, for better or for worse, is one of the areas of the county, one of the few areas of the county that has any real has the right kind of topography that you can grow it. And those two triangles, if you will, are the logical ways to grow Valley Springs along the lines of what we think could happen in 20 years.
Right. And it may not be exactly that location. It could be further to the west.
These are very conceptual
They're
drawings.
very conceptual. That's why there's just a dotted
But
line.
basically, that's right.
Yeah.
This is accurate, conceptually.
All right, so are we good with the revision? Shall work to facilitate the acquisition of right-of-way?
The only thing I would suggest is that you might make a distinction between these two potential projects. Peter, these two possible roadways.
All part of the future bypass, right? I don't see two projects, I mean, I could see where they could operate independently, like one could be funded one year and then the next year, but they're all part of the bypass.
Well, you're only going around, yeah, okay. Inasmuch as you've got this as a reference, fine.
Okay, all right. Moving on,
Yeah, I wanted to go back to 2.23 for a second, if we could.
okay?
New development above 3,000 feet in elevation. So we have conflicting numbers going on there. And if I'm correct, there is state guidelines on the elevations for snow removal of buildings, correct, for snow loads?
There are different standards for snow loads based on elevation, yes.
Correct. Okay, so in some of our building department materials for snow loads, it was changed to 3,500 feet. This comes back to 3,000 where it was originally. It doesn't seem like we're following, where's this number coming from, I guess is my ultimate question.
The 3,000 feet?
Yep.
I don't
I'm
know
ask-
specifically where that number comes from. That's typically the number that you have to deal with snow on a regular basis. And where the snow loading requirements change, the higher up you go, the more snow you get, and so you've got a higher weight.
Storage,
So you might have, different standards at 35 to 45 to 55, whatever, I don't know what those are, but, the more snow, the stronger your roof has to be, essentially. And so what we're saying by this, and it's an arbitrary number, obviously, it could be 3,500, it could be 2,500, but I think that 3,000 feet is generally recognized as sort of a cutoff of where you're going to have to deal with snow conditions in the wintertime at some point in time. So design for where you're going to have snow storage. You probably have less snow storage at 3,000 feet than you would at 5,000 feet.
It's not going to stay around as long.
It's not going to stay around as long. You don't have to move it out, and so you clear your roads, you push the snow to one side. In your landscaping area, there's a place that doesn't have trees, so you can push the snow onto it. It melts, the ground cover, comes back in the spring, and you're good to go. Higher elevations, some of that snow is going to sit there from the first snow until June, if we get a good snow year. And so that's going to be there for a long time. You're going to have much more. If you have a heavy winter, you're going to keep piling that snow on. You're going to have more storage. So it's going to vary This doesn't say that the same standard applies wherever you are above 3,000 feet. It just says you have to consider design of snow storage appropriate to that site,
Above
obviously.
3,000.
And, okay, so I guess I'm struggling with this because I obviously live in the snow. And when we're doing any type of repairs or anything, we have different numbers coming out of our building department than that 3,000 feet.
I think we're talking apples and oranges here. The
Yeah,
building
okay.
department standards are how do you withstand the weight of the snow?
On your structures.
The roads, as far as clearance, 3,000 feet is the standard for when certain grade limitations apply because of freezing conditions. You don't want to have icy steep roads. Fire safe standards vary at 3,000 feet because of that. So that's a fairly standard threshold for the difference between snow conditions and not snow conditions. Doesn't mean we won't get snow down at Angels Camp. We do once in a while.
Oh, we do.
But
including,
rarely
but not,
compared to Dorrington.
what's the maximum grade? Is there a number that is out there that we follow?
That would be in the design standards, and I believe at, I don't want to.
So is this referencing a building standard somewhere that we're getting this data from, that we're setting these guidelines to? Because it's just,
We will end up, we probably have standards already
Mm-hmm.
that say if you're above this elevation, the maximum grade can be not more than 12%, or whatever the number is. Below that, it might be 15%.
okay.
And I'm just pulling these numbers out there.
I
I don't remember what they are. And so.
But we have something to refer to for
Yes,
these,
yeah.
for this. It's not just whatever we decide maximum is tomorrow, that's what it is.
No, we would apply that based on modifications to the design standards.
Okay.
Or, whatever other, formal adopted measures are. There could be CAL FIRE standards, they could be state or the county standards that we go back and revisit are, but they would be something that would be reviewed and formally adopted, not just, today we're applying this standard. It has to be something that would be formally adopted.
I've never seen snow storage requirements show up before, so that was interesting because, yeah, we can lose a whole parking lot for that.
Well, that's why we want to consider that, so that when we adopt design standards for Arnold, they're going to be different than they would be for Copperopolis, because, hey, your landscaping area and parking area needs to consider snow storage.
Okay.
And I have to apologize for asking to revisit 224 for a moment, because the last part of that, to facilitate through traffic movement around the community, that's not what the projects were envisioned to do, as I understand it. And in fact, for traffic that's on 12 and staying on 12, it doesn't do anything. The purpose of these projects, these road projects, was primarily to open up properties for development adjacent to these, to fill in these triangles and adjacent to these roadways, to facilitate the outward growth of Valley Springs in the manner that I previously mentioned. It wasn't to create a traffic flow, correct a traffic flow problem. So this being a circulation element, I understand how you want to talk about traffic movement, but that's not really that wasn't the thrust of these two road projects.
To stimulate development?
Actually, I take that back. And again, this goes back to the fact that these were two different ideas here. The road from 26 to 12 that ends up over there by the gas station, or Lime Creek, okay? That was considered as a traffic issue. And instead of that big project, they just did the intersection. And that pretty much solved the problem. It was a low-cost way to solve the problem.
We could probably strike that last phrase, maybe just to facilitate through traffic. But the purpose of the policy here is, it sort of gets back to what Mr. Haley was talking about before, is we know there's going to be more development. And in order to accommodate all that development, do we want a 4-lane road through Valley Springs, or do we want to have other alternative routes that could be
That's my
created?
point, is that I think the focus should be to facilitate projected growth in the area. Because
Well, it
that's
does
really
both.
the purpose of it.
But it does both.
I know it does both.
So why not just strike the last phrase?
Traffic movement. Oh, you're just saying that the county shall work to facilitate the acquisition of right-of-way to construct a future bypass around Valley Springs?
Period.
Okay,
Because it serves multiple purposes.
It does.
I'm good with that.
Me too.
Okay. All right, so what I was thinking, because I think we talked about this before, is that should we go to the implementation measures for general and roadway system and talk about those so that while they're fresh in our minds, and then do public comment, or which might make more sense since still we're talking about both of those all together, or should we do public comment on the,
I think you're on it.
do implementation measures first?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so we'll go to implementation measures for, we'll do general and roadway.
So 17 and 18.
Yeah, 17 and 18. And that way, if we're, if we don't get through all today, at least might have these, these discrete kind of chunks.
Correct.
Okay,
Good idea.
all right. So we're on page 17, on the implementation programs, general circulation.
Hang on. One.
Anyone? Anyone?
I had a 1A, but I got to read my note here. My note about 1A has to do with the list, 1 through 4. Looks like repetitive language is my basic note, kind of a remixing of words. I don't see anything new here.
Not sure.
The only change that I made from that was released last year was added the word accessibility to the first bullet. So your comments and questions,
Let me just flip to, let's see, we are on
you had
17. What year
added
is it?
sort of practicality, economic feasibility, and topographic concerns.
I'm not sure, so you're saying the list is redundant of what? Is that what you're saying?
I'm trying to understand my own note. Thank you
Okay.
very much. Safe access to public transportation, yada, 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 safe road crossing, interconnected, which include...
Okay, number 4.
Let's see, you've got 5 where you used to have 4 points, is that right? But, no, here
No.
it is.
Now, the only change is that one underlined word.
Oh, okay. My more important note is bullet point number 4, which relates to the comment that I made before about travel trips being shortened and the practicality of doing that.
So I thought of an example.
Okay,
And I think it's something that maybe it was Joyce mentioned. In Murphy's, I live in a little subdivision, and there are 2 ways in and out, both end up on Highway 4. There's 2 other subdivisions that sort of back up to it, but there's no interconnectedness between. So if I wanted to go visit a friend in the other neighborhood, I've got to go out to Highway 4 and back in. Design-wise, it would have been great to have had a little substreet that connected those 2. And so you could go from the one subdivision to the next, and actually then I could actually walk into town rather than having to walk on the highway. It's a mile from my house to downtown Murphy's, and yet I have to walk on Highway 4 to do that, where I could very easily go through local residential streets and stay off the highway.
And I'd say,
Those are the kind of design things where you
Okay.
would have
And it-
Obviously, the major connections from community to community, those were established years ago, but it's internal to the community that you reduce that half-mile trip to a quarter-mile trip, or maybe even walking.
So
Put
you-
everything on a side street instead of even.
Well, on
Or just
everything, because you don't want to
connecting.
have, don't want to turn that into an arterial and change that local residential street to a collector road,
Right.
but still design it so there's interconnectedness.
So maybe you don't have a cul-de-sac, but you do have a little, like a stub to another, to another local street, so that you could do, that was my, like I said, not a lot of dead-end streets or cul-de-sacs, or just connecting other local streets, so you don't have to,
Okay, so it would only apply to new developments where you'd have to, if a new development is going in and there's a lot of vacant land near it, which may or may not ever be developed, then this first guy that comes in and does his development, instead of saying, okay, we're going to allow you this cul-de-sac here, we want you to make a stub.
Or at least reserve the right-of-way for
A
it.
right-of-way, reserve a right-of-way, so that there's not a house at the end of that cul-de-sac, there's a right-of-way.
Right.
You've got to carve that out.
That's one example, yes.
That's a good example.
Okay, I understand it. That sounds like that could actually happen.
Yes, it could.
I have a question on the second bullet point, where it reads, "Safe access to public transportation and other non-motorized uses through construction of dedicated paths where appropriate and where right-of-way is available." I think I get the part about safe access to public transportation. In other words, you got to have a good way to get to the bus. But other non-motorized uses through construction of dedicated paths, what does that mean? Are we talking, is this bike paths along roads, or just what is it?
Could be a bike path, could be a pedestrian walkway. Again, since I live in Murphy's, I'm familiar with that. At the corner of 4 and Big Trees Boulevard, where the stoplight is, there is a pathway so it takes you off the road, there's a little pedestrian bridge that crosses the creek and takes you back over to the commercial area. Now, that's something that was developed to assist pedestrians, avoid that intersection where there's a lot of traffic movement, and still facilitate pedestrian movement through that area. That would be something where, safe access, for non-motorized use. Kids use it all the time for bikes. It ultimately could connect to Michelson School. There's a lot of different, issues that are associated with non-vehicular traffic that we sort of overlooked in the past as we focus on vehicular traffic, that we're trying to look at, well, gee, how do we get other people, other types of movement occurring here in a safe way?
Okay, thank you.
I've got one on 1A, and that is, wait a minute, let me just make sure.
While you're looking at that one, or do you have it?
I'm looking at, so in Commissioner Tuno's, it had numbers in
I
ours
changed the numbers to
to
bullets.
bullets, okay.
I
all
thought
right.
the numbers sort of gave it a sense of hierarchy, which really wasn't there.
So, Peter, if we go back to the third bullet,
Yeah, I'm
safe-
good with that, because he had something in his that I, okay.
Safe road crossings to expand travel routes and allow short trips to be completed. Nope, that's not where I was at. Bullet number 3. Safe road crossings, major intersections, especially at locations regularly used. And then we document school children and seniors. I think that should just encompass everybody and not specify. I mean, everybody would use those bikeways, pathways, walkways, and I think by specifying,
Used regularly by pedestrians?
yeah, I think that's a more appropriate use.
Or just used regularly.
Because if
Because they
we're,
may not be a pedestrian, they might be a bicyclist. might
yeah,
be-
that's, yeah.
Or used heavily? I don't know.
I think we should just be encouraging the safe road crossings that made her.
For everyone.
For everybody and everything. Whether you're on a skateboard, a bicycle, or you're walking, I don't care. In a wheelchair.
Intersections, period. Just put period. Safe road crossings at major intersections.
I think the focus of this was that, there's the concept of these safe routes to school, getting,
Yeah.
Kids be able to get to school, safely. And also, many seniors do not drive in comparing to the rest of the
Or
population.
kids.
Or kids. So children and seniors are more likely to walk than other people. Sometimes they just, they lose their driver's license, they don't have the, whatever. Many seniors don't drive anymore compared to the rest of the population.
We're gonna
So that
use-
was why we were sort of focusing on that. So if you have a location, say a senior center or a school or the hospital, where you're likely to have more people walking to that, that was the reason why that was brought out. It's not necessary.
Well, I think we should be looking at it no matter what it is. If it's even getting to a shopping center, it doesn't have to be a school
Yeah.
for me. I think that's a good policy.
So you guys want to just strike
Yeah,
the especially
'cause
locations?
It's discriminatory because I'm in the middle and then I get left out. Do you care?
I don't really care.
Yeah, you
I
don't
was just,
care about
I was just
me.
explaining why seniors and children were sort of the focus of that statement.
Is it
but
important to note that in the
I
element?
I don't think so.
He's good with it.
I'm good with it.
Okay.
All right, moving on to 1B, greenhouse gases.
I'm just not sure that this adds anything.
I'm trying to figure this one out too.
And my note is the same, is that I believe that it is contained in multiple components of the element, of the entire element,
I mean,
and that it was redundant as a result.
we wouldn't be, without this, the county would not have a policy of refusing to consider transit programs, ride-sharing programs, bicycle and pedestrian improvements, and so forth. All this does, it says, we will consider them. Well, of course we will. So why does this have to be here?
Well, that's why I think the favorably was sort of the operative word in here that was struck.
It's really almost more policy language than it is an implementation program or measure.
And we are replete with
And we have
references to
other
this in policy.
measures in the conservation open space that talked about it's,
I think we heavily
Do we
covered
not
that.
satisfy our requirement to address greenhouse gases as
I
far as the
think
state?
that it would be
Under resource protection
helpful
and
Yeah.
conservation.
to have
Yes.
something in here that correlates transportation and greenhouse gases. I'm not sure this is the policy that does that, and I'm not sure what it might be, but I know that we certainly address greenhouse gases more specifically in the conservation open space element. So we've, in my mind, met the requirements of the state to address that. I think that as we go through these other policies, the other implementation programs, it may not be, flashing light, this addresses greenhouse gases, but it certainly could be explained. It'd be interesting to see how the EIR sort of, talks about that. And maybe there's some other policy that sort of our implementation program that flows out of that might, be more specific. So here's something the county can do, rather than just sort of generalized, repeat of what the policy language said. For the purpose of demonstrating compliance with state law, I would like to see something in there. But this policy, this measure, I'm not sure it does it. Now that you've mentioned, I sort of thinking out loud here. It's probably not necessary, but it probably would be helpful in future discussion of, well, have we met all these various state requirements? Something to point to, say, well, in addition to these other policies, we also have something in our circulation element.
Well,
Why
an
don't we-
implementation measure would be something like if we promised, or if we said that we will fast-track projects, or some action that we were taking.
Right.
That's why favorably
Or
was.
adopt some new standards that do something.
That's why favorably was the only thing that was in there that was sort of
Mm-hmm.
special. And once you scratch that out, it's basically, as Kelly's right, I mean, we'll consider everything.
Yeah.
Well, why was favorably taken out?
Because he thought you were going to go after that word.
He was preempting you.
It seems sort of redundant. I mean, to me, consider, of course, means we're going to look at it, and if it, I mean, favorably considered just seems unnecessary. It seemed like an unnecessary.
Well, to me, it's like
adverb.
it's got special status. Favorably means special status, you're
I would be okay with that word going back in. I mean, I don't see an issue with it, do you?
Well, I think without the word going back in,
It's
this
more
is...
policy and not implementation.
Well,
No,
it's
and I
it's
agree.
kind of a nothing.
It is
Yeah.
nothing. That's why
Well-
you,
Can we put
Guys
it
want to move it
back?
back in? It's up to you guys.
Just take that line out of the middle of the word. We're
Okay.
good.
Keep that.
David, you're good?
Well, okay.
Right.
I was looking around to the element elsewhere, because if you weren't going to address greenhouse gases here in this way, but you thought that a mention of it belongs somewhere in circulation, even though it's heavily dealt with elsewhere,
Right.
because there are
okay,
impacts associated.
then the place to plop it in might be under roadway system, C215. Because that
But-
kind,
But
The reason it's in general is because I think it goes beyond just roads. I
Yeah.
mean, the whole concept of this general circulation is we're trying to
Get people
move
to
away
walk.
where it's possible, or,
Right.
within the reason of
Walking, bicycling.
vehicular traffic. Because that is the number one,
this is the unicorn element, I got it.
So, and what I would suggest is if, I mean, we leave this in here if that's fine for now, and then as you're going, you might be thinking about this as a way, as an alternative, which we would be open to.
yeah,
Okay. All right?
and we'll keep the word favorably.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, transportation alternatives and impact fees.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have notes here. My note is that it doesn't seem to be describing an actual impact fee. We have impact fees, we have RIM fees, or impact fees, and we have agreed that new developments will pay their own way in the form of those fees and others. But that doesn't seem to be what this is. A transit capital improvement, consider transit capital improvements and non-auto travel improvements in impact fee programs. What impact fee programs are we talking about here?
Are they
So
new?
right now, the RIM fee just covers the roads. It doesn't cover sidewalks, it doesn't cover any other type of transportation methods. And so the idea here is that where new development will impact the need for sidewalks or bike trails or anything else, that be considered as a part of our analysis. Now, again, they can't pay any more than their fair share, so it's going to be, if anything, a minimal amount. But when we're looking at the cost of constructing new roads in the county, we should also look at, well, are those roads going to have a sidewalk on them? And what's the cost of that? So that they're paying for the full freight of what that road needs to be.
So this would entail a revision of sort of the RIM fee schedule, I suppose?
Well, we will need to go back and review our RIM fee. If we haven't done it already, we should, we need to do it soon to see, is it at the appropriate level?
You've already mentioned reasons why you need to revisit. Yeah.
And there may be infrastructure changes that would increase or decrease that amount based on the ultimate land use design. But we should also look at, well, are there other things in the RIM fee that is part of that road infrastructure cost that's not being considered? Ultimately, it's the board's decision as, do we, and it wouldn't be like operations for buses, but if we have areas where we need to construct a bus stop, you know, is that upfront physical cost, the capital cost of that improvement, or a sidewalk, or some other you know, connection, a part of the overall impact fee, so that that's funded as well as just the road surface where the vehicles drive.
So it could be if you had a new development and you've got a bike lane that stops here and a bike lane that stops there, then the developments here is including the cost of that?
Well, no, it's when we look at the overall cost of this road system on page, you know, figure 3, that says, here are the new road improvements we're going to need to accommodate the growth. We also look at, well, where do we need sidewalks? How's that going to get funded? Where do we need bus stops? And that's also built into the RIM fee. Or some other, I mean, it could be the RIM fee, it could be some other fee.
Where do we need them associated with that project, correct?
Associated with future development in the county.
Yeah, see, that's the problem in my mind, and I think it was brought up before, but I think Mr. Wooster brought it up. A development goes in, it pays a bunch of RIM fees, the money gets spent somewhere else. The project, the impact of that project in the way of road improvements, including sidewalks and a bike path or whatever, doesn't get put there because the priority has been placed on some other project, some other area, some other neighborhood. There's no earmarking here. How do you...
Well, and there's ways to resolve that. You could have zones within the RIM fee, so that if you're in zone 1, all that money has to go to that. The problem with that is then you have these small pots of money that are never big enough to actually complete a project.
But then all the big.
And it ends up the board's priority when they look at the county's capital improvement plan. We've got
Okay, but Peter...
$300,000 in our road budget, you know, in our RIM fee, and we could use that for this high priority need right now. Yeah, granted, we collected those monies in Valley Springs and we're going to put it in Copperopolis, but that's where we could best use our money to solve a problem. And then 5 years from now, we'll have another pot of money, and by then, the number one priority is going to be in Valley Springs. Ultimately, it's going to, you know, to balance. But I see that people say, well, I'm paying my money here and it's being spent in West Point. How do you know? That's not fair.
You're talking about these small pockets of money, okay? And it's never enough to do a project, but it's supposed to be enough to address the impact of that development.
Right.
So why would it ever need to be collected up and spent somewhere else?
Well, the impacts on the road system, in some cases, are countywide. If you live in Arnold, you're driving down Highway 4 to Modesto sometimes. And a lot of people do every day.
Oh,
And
okay.
so there are regional traffic impacts.
Of course.
That affect the level of
We
service.
also
With respect to road
have,
maintenance is absolutely true, but with respect to the other non-motorized vehicle type projects, it's not true. The development in Arnold, that new development that goes in Arnold is not impacting the non-motorized, the need for non-motorized traffic in West Point. It's indeed, those new residents in Arnold are driving on 4, and you've got to maintain all of 4 all the way through the county. But it's these other projects you're talking about that they get prioritized by whatever means, and those people have paid their RIM fees into that includes that kind of a project, and it never gets built there. It gets built somewhere else. And you never have enough, if you're, well, you talked about a system under which there's never enough money because all of the little accounts are too small. And so you use it over here. You collect it up and use it. In that scenario, there's never enough money for anything. You never get to do your list.
right.
Okay? It's a pyramid scheme. The people at the bottom paid, and the people that have been waiting the longest get their project done. But only because there's more money coming in at the bottom of the pyramid. It's unsustainable. So either you raise the RIM fees by I don't know how much,
Welcome to local road funding.
Okay. And I suppose it all goes back to what now, Prop 13 or something?
So, you know what, when a new development is built, all throughout this entire general plan, the developer has to do this, developer has to do that, put sidewalks, put curbs, put parks, put whatever. There's never an end to this. So I am, and they're paying impact fees. I mean, they're putting in things and infrastructure in our county that we would have never had without these developers, period. I am totally opposed to adding another impact fee on developers. If we want to do that as a county, as a whole, as a population that lives here, if we feel the need that we need more park and ride, we need more bus stops, then as county people, we need to be paying for it. But to constantly be putting this on like this is, to the point, it's getting ridiculous. I mean, seriously, when you talk about those impact fees, I mean, I hate to even go there, but those RIM fees to me have always been the biggest joke that ever existed, because they don't get applied to where they're collected. And I understand you would never have enough money to complete a project, but when you live in a little community and you pay that RIM fee, you don't see that money come home to a small community. You see it all go into the bigger communities because the need is greater, the impacts are bigger, and all that money has to be collected to fix the bigger area. So as somebody that lives in a smaller community, I don't see that money come home. And it gets really frustrating getting taxed to death, and I'm going to call the impact fee a tax, even though they call it a fee. I don't even need to go there right now. I am totally opposed to that, and if I have any option whatsoever, it's to pull that out of here completely. I support paying for park and rides and getting your bus stops and getting, but I think that you can only put so much on a developer when it comes to the responsibility of people that live in this county. If we need these services all over the county, us as people that live here should be taking care of our own communities, and we should be looking at taking care of that ourselves, not putting everything on one individual, and then that money goes from their pocket into, we don't know where that money goes. And how do you trace that money back? How do we find out where impact fees were collected and then re-spent?
Should all be accounted to the Public Works Department.
Okay, I'll be finding that out. I'll bring it back to the next meeting. Actually, they're coming here.
It's the equitable nature of the distribution that bothers me. And I'm with Lisa, I don't want to add fees, but I want to make and I don't know if this is the place to put it, Peter, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that a development goes in, they pay their RIM fees, and years later, people say, you know what, we need sidewalks or a bike path in this community. Yeah, you paid for one. Where is it? It's in some other community. How the heck could that be? Because that's where your money went. It doesn't make any sense. How do you justify that to people? How do you justify that to the public? And I also understand that, yes, when it comes to roads, everybody drives on all the roads practically.
Yes.
Okay? But you for certain drive on the road right outside your new development. So impact number one is there, and to a much lesser degree on the highway 20 miles away.
Right.
Now, how you apportion that, I don't know. And maybe you can't. Maybe it just goes into a slush fund and the roads get fixed as they need to be fixed. Fine. But where the inequity is really apparent is when it comes to all these little wish list projects, park and rides and bike paths and goodies, we'll call them. I don't mean to be pejorative, but let's call them goodies for now. If a development goes in, they paid fees that have been increased so that goodies could be bought, then it should go right there, right on that development.
It does. A developer already pays for that. They give you parks, they give you sidewalks. They're already putting all that in. So by asking for this fee, you're asking for a developer to pay for it somewhere else. He is already going to have...
Or pay for it twice.
Pay for it twice. He's already going to have to pay for these types of developments. It's all throughout the general plan. He isn't going to not put sidewalks in. The developer's not going to be, they're most likely going to put a park in as well.
So they're,
Well, we're requiring that in many cases that they do that.
and we're asking them to put bike paths and pedestrian ways in. So now we're asking them to also pay an impact
For
fee.
somebody else that didn't have one.
And
because-
that belongs
right.
on the people that live in their area. I mean, I am fully supportive of putting in these pedestrian walkways and the bicycle paths and everything else. But if we wait for someone to develop to get those things, we're not ever going to get them. If we want them, we have to step up and say, this is what we want, and find a way to pay for it.
Well, I think we're saying the same thing. My objection is people who buy the homes in a development and/or the developer, in addition, pay for something that they don't get. It's really for the county to use elsewhere.
Sometimes.
And
Well, I mean, it could be very well
I
that
understand.
that priority,
It may
is,
be
you know,
really
they get it.
it may be really needed elsewhere, but it's just not fair. If elsewhere needs this thing, then why can't they form a basin retroactively, form a basin and pass a tax for that basin? If they all agree, we want a bike path through our community. From here to here, that's going to cost X dollars. We need to form a basin for that, and we need to approve a tax. Put it before the public and let them decide if they want to spend their money that way.
That's not how it works.
So,
We apply for grants, and then we have to match the grants.
Oh,
and then-
okay,
yeah.
well,
So the focus of this was really intended that the fee program was to consider more than just the roadway surface to accommodate vehicle traffic. And maybe the way this was worded led us, to the discussion we've had as far as, the fees being spent in other communities and not directly benefiting those who are paying the fee.
paying for it.
The intent of this was more that we should look beyond just the road improvements as part of the overall circulation needs of the county.
I've got no problem with that.
And so maybe this needs to be reworded to focus its attention that way rather than the way it's been, interpreted here.
well, and what I'm hearing, it's not so much the levying of the fees, but the distribution
Right.
of how they're spent. Right?
True, and the distribution of how they're spent is going to affect the fee itself, but nevertheless, I don't talk to developers enough to know, do they object to rim fees? I have an issue with rim fees, it's a longer discussion, but I don't think it's fair for people to pay something and their money isn't going to their neighborhood, their community, even their community at all. It's going somewhere else.
Clearly, no one wants to pay a fee they don't have to pay. They want to keep a fee as low as possible.
And on top of that, Lisa's absolutely right. We're going to require the developer to put in these amenities, and on top of which, a portion of their rim fees is going to pay for the same kind of amenity someplace else, because they're out of money, because collectively they don't have enough, because the rim fees got spent somewhere else.
So to me, it seems like there's an argument or a case here for like a reevaluation of how the RIM fees operate,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
So that maybe but I don't know that that's a discussion for here, but I would agree with you. I think even a prioritized list of how, not necessarily that everybody's got a little pot of money, but you've got an accounting, and a prioritized list so that you have this much, and maybe somebody's borrowing a little bit of yours, but you're going to get it back and then coming back. There's,
Oh, yeah, you're going to get it back.
or somehow, some accounting and accountability for the RIM fees.
I could see,
But why
I
wouldn't
could
that belong
see
here
I
as
don't
a
know.
policy to review
I
the
could
rim
see that.
fee
Distribution.
system,
Yeah.
fees and distributions, apportionments, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah. I agree.
I think it's a tar baby, but I think this is the place to look at it.
Yeah.
I would think that might fit C2E, that we expand that. One is the update to make sure it keeps up with inflation, but also to review it for distribution.
Equitable
Equitable
distribution.
distribution.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're
Because
going
I
to
think
raise
that-
the impact fee now.
There should be some accountability
Well,
to the,
I tell you what, you want to jump to that now?
No.
2E?
No.
What are we doing with 1C?
yeah, let's
Yeah.
just, well, let's put, well, let's keep that discussion for when we get there, but we put equitable,
No,
I mean,
we're
I don't
not
think we're
working
going to
on that.
forget our,
So,
The
so
content.
the question here is whether or not we should look beyond the traffic impacts, the road impacts with the road impact fee to other aspects of circulation. That's what this implementation was trying to get at. I think that perhaps it's too broad.
Well, I'm not sure I understand what it's supposed to do or what it does as written, because it seems to be in a couple of parts. It says, consider transit capital improvements and non-auto travel improvements and impact fee programs. That's so far. I'm not even sure I understand transit capital improvements. What does that mean?
like busing,
Bus
it could be a
stops.
bus stop.
Okay, and then we're going to, for new development, to fund public transportation infrastructure, park and ride lots, and bicycle and pedestrian facilities associated with new development. Now, is this, is this speaking solely to how you figure out the amount that has to be paid as opposed to where it's going to be spent?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's put aside where it's going to be spent, because obviously there's a big issue there. But that's not what this is talking about. This is talking about how you're
How
going
much
to
you're gonna
compute
pay.
the amount they have to pay.
Right.
Okay, and these are supposed to be impact fees, which I take it to be a fee to compensate for the increased costs associated by this development, okay?
Correct.
Now, if you have a development that doesn't have any park and ride lots, or bike or pedestrian facilities, or any bus stops, why is it appropriate to include a fee to compensate for the cost of those?
So the way the fee program is built is that we look at the road, the map, and we say, okay, we're going to need the next 20 years, these improvements, adding passing lanes on Highway 12, widening Highway 26 to 4 lanes, all the various things. And that's going to cost us X millions of dollars. And then we divide that by the number of houses that we expect to have, over the next 20 years, and there's the cost. What this is saying is that in addition to looking at all those roadway improvements, where do we need a park and ride lot? Where do we need a bus stop? Where do we need a sidewalk?
Okay,
and not
associated-
just localized, but sort of on the generalized improvements for those roads. Or when we're designing those roads that are going to be widened to 4 lanes, do we need to have a sidewalk on that as well?
Okay, and that's,
so
is
those
that
costs
part
are
of the
included
impact?
then.
Is that part of the impact caused by the development? That's what I'm trying to get at.
No.
Well, yes, it could be.
Okay.
It has to be. Let me rephrase that. It has to be, because otherwise, it's not an impact fee.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
And
Now,
so the demand of park and ride lots would be driven by another 5,000 homes.
okay, so
How
what
many do we
you're,
need to accommodate another 5,000 homes? Where do they need to be? We need to have one in Copperopolis and one in Valley Springs, and that covers it for all development. Now, maybe someone from McCollum Hill drives down to the park and ride lot in Valley Springs, meets a friend from Paloma, and they carpool together, or they catch the bus, or whatever it might be. So it is a general benefit to all development in the county.
but we're just trying to figure out, I'm trying to figure out what this means and how it works. The last phrase, associated with new development, would it be clearer to say associated with the new development?
Sure?
Okay, so if what all this is doing is saying, we're only talking about how we figure how we're going to compute the funds that are required, and all we're saying is, to the extent that there are non-roadway improvements that are actually going to be appropriate or necessary or required by virtue of this new development, that those improvements, just like new roads or wider roads, ought to be included in the formula to figure the fee. Is that what we're doing?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, I'm having trouble seeing why that's not appropriate, because why is it any different than any other impact? If it's an impact, it's an impact, and this is an impact that's associated with the development, and it has to do with transportation. Somebody's going to have to pay for it.
I'm sorry, your question is, you don't see,
He doesn't have a problem with it, is that what you're saying?
As I'm trying to work my way through this, putting aside the inequities
Right.
involved with the distribution, which I fully understand, but this is not addressing that. This is only how you're going to figure how much has to be
Right.
paid. And I think maybe this is okay.
How about let's try some other language that might help clarify that. Consider transit capital improvements and non-auto improvements necessary to serve new development in impact fee programs to fund public transportation infrastructure, et cetera.
Associated with the new development.
Yes,
So it ties together. So
Ties
it's
back
a
together.
true impact fee.
right,
And not just a sort of a tax
right.
that we saw a chance to whack somebody with.
because the
Because we
last
could.
one's in the door.
Because again, through an impact fee, you can only charge that which is caused by the new impact. We can't retroactively say, so there's going to be, in that calculation, how much of this impact is caused by existing development. So if we have 40,000 people in the county right now, we're adding 10, we need 2 park and ride lots, I'm just using that as an example. So new development's proportion of that is 1/4. The cost of a park and ride lot is $200,000, their component is $50,000. And that's how it's then allocated out to the, 5,000 new lots, and they're, do the math.
Okay, I think I would like to hear from the public before I take any real firm position on this.
All right, so we'll just leave that the way it is, the revision right now, because we will hear from the public on this, okay. Moving on to circulation and access plans. Any comments?
Just a second.
I'm good with that one.
No, I don't have any notes.
Nothing here.
All right, so then roadway, no, oh, and I'm sorry, maintenance and improvement coordination and C-1E.
That's good.
Wait a second, I'm behind you.
You have time, I was just stating I didn't have any notes on it.
Oh, yes, that's my note. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, if I recall, that was
Yeah.
your suggestion.
I wrote that.
Good job.
Any comments on either of these?
I'm good.
Okay,
Fine.
shall we move to roadway transportation?
No,
No?
no. Should we let them comment?
Well,
at
we
this
did
point?
do both, we did roadway transportation with the policies too, I'm trying to,
Just,
That's a lot. Okay.
let's stay with the system here, we're doing good.
So this is us 4, and then we
Been
can...
2 hours.
yes. No, well, you're going to have plenty of time, but I was just trying to
Should give you
keep with the
extra
program.
minutes.
Roadway...
Transportation?
Transportation implementations, 2B. No,
Anything?
no.
No, okay. So, except we were going to have a discussion about equitable distribution on the RIM fee update, right?
Are we on 2E?
Yes.
And are we looking for language?
Yes, I think so.
Well, I don't have any.
Okay,
How
so,
about just at the end of the end, to address equitable distribution of funds?
The, you talk about looking at the impact fees to keep up with inflation, but are we also not keeping up with our growing list of goodies? Where impact fees previously addressed roads, now we are asking them to address other things that we want, community needs.
Well, I think that at the time that we update our RIN fee or review the RIN fee, we would be looking at that. We would look at both of those measures concurrently. I don't think we need to restate it in another measure.
And those would be two separate accounts, not commingled.
no, that would be the same. The
It-
RIM,
it-
it would just
no.
include.
It could be separate. It could be one.
Well, if you combine those, you're never going to get your parking lot. You're going to continue to do road impacts. They have to be separate and accountable, in my opinion. I mean, then it's going to be one big chunk that goes all towards road improvements, because God knows we all know we need that.
And someplace else, but other
And
than,
then you're
in
never
Arnold.
going to see the
Yeah.
infrastructure take place. I mean,
It's gonna sound-
basically, my impacts to this county are on the state highway.
Well, that's most of
I mean,
it,
but-
and much of that comes from state and federal funding.
Yeah.
And part of that state and federal funding mechanism is how well are we addressing complete streets? What other programs are there to get people off the road?
I just don't want to
And
see.
so maybe that road funding is tied to the development of a park and ride, and if we can use that percentage of the amount of the RIM fee to help pay for the park and ride lot, then we get the $20 million from, FHA.
Yeah, it's just moving money around, Peter. I mean, if you're going to tell me that we have impact.
Lots of money around, yes.
Yeah, right, but if you're going to tell me we're charging an impact fee for a specific thing, but now we're going to combine it into two specific things, I just cannot get behind that. If you're collecting it for a specific item and you have a nexus to meet that impact fee, okay. But combining them together tells me all you're doing is commingling the money and using it to further, I just can't get, I cannot get.
You don't
behind
want a
this
slush
at all.
fund.
I don't want a slush fund. I want you to prove to me why you need the
I
money,
agree.
and I
Well, I
want it to
think
be
that-
spent for
that-
that specific item.
I think this gets back to a need to, and I don't know,
Not
and maybe
like-
there's stronger language here about not just equitable distribution, but really about accountability with collection of the funds and equitable distribution to the district where they were collected in, something. I don't know.
You're on the right track
Yeah.
here, and for those, if you're going to apportion RIM fees, if you're not going to create a separate fee that's called a non-transportation related,
Non-roadway, sort of. Yeah.
non-roadway fee, okay? If you're not going to do that, but you're going to include it in RIM, then you've got to have some internal apportionment. That this much is for road and this much is for the new stuff, the bike paths or the whatevers. And in my opinion, you've got to earmark it and you've got to leave it in the account. That's the only way it's not going to get stolen.
Yeah, and
for
that's
somebody's-
why I'm saying, I think it really needs to be looked at, and that's, and reviewed, how we disperse these funds.
Well, as far as being able to adjust, I mean, on the RIM fee, I understand that I live at one end of the county, I drive to the other end of the county, and that I'm using all the roadways in the county to where someone that lives in San Andreas may only go out through Copper or Valley Springs, and they're not coming up the highway. But basically, we are mostly highways unless you have a particular reason to drop off into a subdivision area. So I understand needing to get a collection of monies to get a project done. I think limiting it is not going to get projects done, because you need a certain amount of money to get something done. I get that, but I think that some fair assessments should be looking at where the monies are all going, not just to one area all the time. I'd love to see a list of where the RIM fees have gone recently and in the last couple of years, and are they going to the same area, and is nobody else getting any filtering back? But then you also have to remember that those fees are being collected where businesses are opening, where you've got impacts.
Development.
where development is happening. So if most of that development's happening in Valley Springs
Right.
or in Copperopolis,
That's where the money
monies
should
would
go.
there. So I'm not saying that we have to break it down and say, hey, I paid that $4,000. Well, that $4,000 isn't going to do nothing. It's
But-
got to be a combined collection.
Since our goal here is not to fix the RIM fee issue, but to put language in here that says.
Fix
we
the
know
RIM
we
fee
need to
issue.
Fix the RIM fee
Yes.
issue. Then we need to not just deal with the amounts, but the formulas for
Yes.
collection and distribution
Right.
and et cetera.
Yes.
And how do we do that?
Well, you can say something like, and to correlate distribution of RIM fees with the collection,
Yes, something like, yes.
something like that.
I don't think there's a whole lot you're going to do to change this. There's an ordinance in effect on that RIM fee.
Well, we're already
Well, yeah,
saying
but
we're going to be looking at
But
it.
what this policy says is we're
We're
going to
gonna
go
look
back and
at
look
it.
at that ordinance and maybe amend it.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point here.
Can
I'm
we
saying
just delete it?
delete the RIM fee?
Your language, your
So
element
let's-
comes at the end?
So let's go with that language for right now, and then let's hear from the public, because we're at the end of the section, and then we can, because there's another one that we want to hear from the public on. So we move this along. Good? Okay. Welcome.
Bill McManus, Calaveras Project. In listening to all this, standing at the altar of government, I hate to say this, but I don't trust the government to keep accurate accounting of monies that are collected from disparate areas to be used on politically favored projects and trust that it's all going to work out the same. We've seen this with COG. Now, I think there's a couple parallels that you could look at that achieve the same thing, but the momentum is based on self-interest, whether it be the government or developers or citizens or whatever. The first example is like forest roads. Now, this goes back a few years. When a logging company got a permit to log on the national forest, they would bid for the timber and all that. The Forest Service wanted the roads improved so that the trucks could get in to get the timber. So what they do is they offer the timber company money for improving the roads. Now, this is a mutual benefit arrangement because the roads get improved. It helps the loggers so they don't tear up their equipment. They've got nice roads. And the Forest Service can then offer easier access to the public to get into the forest and enjoy the forest. So it's like win-win-win all the way around. Now, in the case of a developer with RIM fees, they may want to have sidewalks in their subdivision. They may want to have parking rides and bus stops and swings and I don't know what else. That helps them. But rather than charge the developer money that's going to go into a pot and somehow blossom out someplace as a big improvement, offer the developer the option of saying, okay, instead of RIM fees, you can mitigate the RIM fees by actually doing these things so the job gets done where it was supposed to get done. If the developer puts in sidewalks, the sidewalks can be scaled out. How much is a foot of sidewalk worth? If they put in trails or parking rides or bus stops or anything like that, a value can be attached to that. The developer can do it. He's going to pay the money anyway, but he may be able to do a better job for less money than the government. I hate to say that, but it's probably true. He also gets the benefit of having a more marketable subdivision because of the amenities, and we're not keeping track of where the dollars are floating at and accounts, and it's kind of the same as the state gas tax. You know, we all pay gas tax, and then the state says we don't have any money to fix our roads. Well, what was the gas tax for? It's supposed to be to fix the roads or to repair the roads. So there's always money floating around somewhere, and I'm sorry, I just don't trust government to not cast a covetous eye on a pot of money over here that they need that will be of political benefit more than actual benefit for the citizens who paid the money. So I think there's maybe some more imaginative ways. It's not, to me, it's not imaginative. It seems pretty common sense that the people who are paying it, if there's a mutual benefit, they will see that it gets done. and government can just stand by and take credit for it. How's that? But you don't have to keep track of the money. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Haley, I'd like to speak as a developer. We don't mind paying our fair share of impact fees, but we've always supported a benefit basin like Copper. Copper has a benefit basin. I know you didn't mention that before, but we do. And we also don't mind paying into a RIM fee, but it has to be reasonable. We understand that the county as a whole kind of is integral and has value to all of us, but it needs to be more accountable, and we think the benefit basin should have more emphasis than the RIM fee, because we would like to pay for interconnecting sidewalks and bike paths, or recreational access like the road to Maloney's we're proposing. We'd like to do it into a basin fee so we know that our money is going to increase the value of our community, which also increases the value of our development. So we're into more accountability, and by doing that, you'll get your basin fees allocated more properly, and the development and construction of those improvements will happen faster. But we don't mind also paying reasonable fees into the RIM. We've always objected to the amount that's being charged in the past because it's not fair. Like I mentioned before, we have no impact on $17 million of roads in Sheep Ranch. I don't even think those people want to increase the roads in Sheep Ranch. So it needs to be more local. Again, we don't mind paying for things outside our development if it's to the benefit of our community, which increases the character of our communities and projects. Thank you.
So I'm just going to ask you just a quick question. On your Copperopolis Basin, so does that cover the entire town of Copperopolis? On the basin
It
benefit you have
covers
set
the
up?
entire basin from Tulloch to Highway 4 to Gopher Ridge to the hills, whatever. I don't remember what we call those on the other side of O'Byrne's Ferry Road. It's the entire basin.
Okay.
Yeah, the Copper Mountain.
Copper Mountain, okay, sorry.
What kind of projects within the basin are being paid for out of these funds?
Good question. You know, like enhancing the O'Byrne's Ferry road improvements and putting in shoulders and so on that haven't been done properly in the past. We don't mind paying for some of those, and so that's one that we agreed to incorporate money towards that because it benefits the whole basin.
Who controls the money?
County, Public Works
Yeah,
Department.
so these are separate road accounts that are focused. And I think what he's getting at is sort of what you guys were getting at is rather than focus on a large county-wide fee, the focus should be that there are individual basins that, I mean, some of them are fairly small, but others are fairly large. You know, all of Valley Springs, you know, the whole sort of northwest corner of the county or western edge of the county is, you know, the larger Valley Springs Basin. The Copper Basin is the other one that covers a large area, and all the money that's collected within that basin is spent within that basin.
Right, and you can get larger projects done, like the access to New Maloney's for copper, which would, in the future, is a benefit to offloading the congestion on Lake Tulloch. Doesn't impact Glory Hole because there'll be future growth there and they'll have theirs. But how do you get that developed? We'd like to put it into the basin fee right now and say it's $1,000 for a permit or whatever it may be. We think it's $1,000, and put that in the basin fee. So
Is there a committee on the basin that has any say-so over how those monies are spent? Or is it just go through Public Works and they make the decision of where the need is?
The board makes a decision.
The board of
Through Public
Supervisors?
Works, yeah. So
And
they
there's no-
present a capital improvement program that says, here's how we're spending this money, here's how we recommend you spend the money, and the board agrees or disagrees and
but
reallocates it.
it's always been a difficult process because they don't like the open dialogue like you guys are having, fortunately. We get shut off from the open dialogue and the RIM fee just kind of wanders on. Nothing ever gets done.
Well, I just find it I just think it would be really neat to have if you've got committee
representatives in the area where the basin is, it just makes sense because they know their area. I mean, it would be, he would know Copperopolis, or Colleen would know Valley Springs, and where that money for the basin should be being addressed and spent. It would be nice to have input from the communities that have that basin benefit, because don't you have one too?
Pardon? Yeah, we do
And-
have one. Robert Packinger's a little bit more aware of what we're talking about here, but it needs to be kept more local. And we don't mind paying our fair share or a little bit beyond, because again, it does benefit our projects as the community develops better.
By law, is the Board of Supervisors supposed to rule on how that money is spent?
Yes.
Because,
So
I mean, they're
so the supervisor of District 4, the community goes to your supervisors and say, hey, we really need this. He or she says, yep, you're right. And he comes to the board, he or she comes to the board, says, I want approval for this project. The rest of the board has to sign off on it, even though it's not the county's money, it's your basin's money.
Yeah, but it needs
Well,
to be allocated.
It is the
fairly.
county's money, but it has to be allocated within that basin.
Yeah.
I would think that Public Works would have to do a study on where it's going, and I mean, you
Well,
can't just.
they do. I mean, a certain amount of money is collected within the basin. And so they provide, annual capital improvement plan, says, okay, we've got this much money in this basin, and we've got a project over here that we've identified as the highest priority, and hey, we've got enough money to do that project, or we have enough money to do half the project right now, and there's, you can break it up into sections. So that's what's presented to the board, and the board says, yeah, that's a good plan. Go forth and build. And so, whether or not there are advisory committees within the basin that could help the Public Works Department and the board decide how it's spent, that's, something that could be considered. But no, it has to be spent within the basin, and it is the board that makes that determination.
But
So
unfortunately.
they can't be transferred, out of basin to be spent somewhere else.
Unfortunately, it has, though, as it relates to the RIM fee, and we've always objected to that equitable distribution and just been,
Yeah. But the RIM fee is countywide, so it can be spent anywhere, you're right.
Right.
Are the basin projects all enhancement, or are they maintenance of roads?
no, they're enhancements to the general character of the community or needs of a community.
Even this curb thing that you talked about on Boone's,
Yeah, that's more than enhancement. It's kind of a back maintenance that should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah.
But we're trying to be a little bit reasonable because once it happens, it does benefit the community, which does benefit each development.
So I guess, some of the other policies and statements in here about, focusing on safety, focusing on, that what's going to get the biggest bang for the buck. And so you might combine a safety improvement with a road widening improvement that takes out a curve, but also, so it enhances the safety, but also enhances traffic flow through an area.
Anyone else?
Okay. Yes, please. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Vicki Reinke, just on these fees, as you know, we're listening, and I know these fees have started happening. It's been many years now that developers are now being asked to pay for a lot of things to mitigate. I think, and some of it's okay, and I know developers are willing to do these things because they want to see their projects go forward. And we're not a very friendly county when it comes to letting people have their projects go forward, so I hope people will think of that. I mean, they are willing to pay, but then on the other side of that coin, as a consumer, it just drives the cost of housing up too, the more we ask of developers to pay for and do. So I hope you kind of keep that balance in mind as well. And I agreed with what you talked about the RIM, how it shouldn't be used just anywhere, but it should be used where those projects were developed. So, keep those things in mind too, because cost of housing is, I don't even know if my kids will ever be able to afford a house. So these kinds of things also play into that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Colleen Platt. I've got 2 hours of stuff I want to talk about, so I've been saving it up.
Okay, while it's fresh in our mind, I want to piggyback on what Dave Haley said, and I support his idea of that benefit basins need more emphasis in here. We've got a program here for a RIM fee update. We need a program for benefit basin updates additionally. They're just as important to our local areas. The Valley Springs area, as Peter said, is a huge benefit basin. I guess Copperopolis is huge. I'm not sure how big. I know their community plan's big. The Murphy's Area Benefit Basin, I know, has a lot, not as huge, but it has a lot of needs up there. And they're specific to our areas, and we know our areas better. And that money does get collected and spent in our area. So I'd really like to see emphasis on benefit basins. You've heard me talk about before how our area was developed in 2004, and it has not been revisited since then. Not been revisited since then. So we have had no updates in the project lists, in the costs, in the fees, nothing since 2004. That is necessary. We really need that. So, sorry, got sidetracked, but that's under these
You're
programs.
talking about your particular basin that you are in,
Yeah,
which is called which now? Which
Valley
one?
Springs Benefit Basin.
Okay, and where does that cover?
The whole west end of the county, mostly in that triangle
Burson
between 12 and 26, from the county line all the way past Valley Springs, the very, very large area.
Okay, you say there's been no accounting, or you haven't been able to find them?
Nothing since 2004.
Since it was formed,
Since
you're
it was
saying.
Since it was formed in 2004. It has an implementation, it's got fees, it's got list of projects.
But you won't have no idea what's been funded through it or how much money's in it?
Because I live there, I know of a couple things that have happened, but there's never been
An update
a
about, this is
report.
how much money we have, these are our priority
Right,
projects,
and in
et
the
cetera.
implementation program, it says we're supposed to revisit that every year to make sure the costs are, we're supposed to revisit the projects every year to 5 years to make sure the projects, the priority hasn't changed over the years, you know.
You
and
say
this-
you know that projects have been built with basin fees.
I'm not sure what they were built with. I know some of the projects on that list have been completed, one or two small ones.
You're assuming that was done with the basin fees?
I don't know, yeah. I'm just saying, those are important programs, and they do affect our local areas with our monies collected from our people who live there. So, like you're saying, accountability, there it is. But I agree that the process for updating those is problematic because it goes through the board, and it's a great big long process, and Public Works has to do road studies. I know I talked to Robert Packinger about this years ago, and they started a study. Public Works directors changed. All the studies out of date. Now we've got to start over again. So, I mean, it's a difficult process to update, but it's very important. So, anyway, that would be under programs. If you could do something about benefit basins, maybe add them in there, that would be really helpful to people. Okay, I'm going to try to back up now, starting from where you were at 1 o'clock. Let me see. I think basically I just wanted to support under where were we? It's hard to keep track of you guys. You're going all over the place here. Yeah, I'm sorry. This is very difficult to track. Okay, let me just go to the page before transportation alternatives, impact fees. I liked Mr. Wooster's interpretation of that made a lot of sense.
What page are you on, Colleen? Can you tell us?
Okay, well, it's my page 18, but I think it's your 17 because things have changed. This is C1C.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Yeah, programs,
if you
general
just do it
circulation.
by the number, then we can follow
Okay,
you.
transportation alternatives and impact, there's a lot of discussion about the impact fees and whether
Right.
they should be considered in RIM. And I liked Kelly's explanation. To the extent there are non-roadway improvements, those improvements ought to be included in the formula. I mean, that just seemed like it was a real simple way to explain that. So maybe that wording, it could help to get that in there somewhere. I support the idea of that. Okay, there was a long time ago, there was a discussion about the future bypass around Valley Springs. So, of course, that's something we're interested in. I think you changed that the county shall work to facilitate acquisition of right-of-way to construct a future bypass around Valley Springs, period, because it served multiple purposes. And I kind of want to agree with that because When people first moved there, actually Caltrans talked about that many, many years ago, and they had 3 or 4 alignments, and it was all one. It wasn't 2 projects. This was a Caltrans project called the Valley Springs Bypass. They had various curvatures, but they were all kind of the same general idea. So that's been going on for many years. I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 years. The concept started a long time ago. So it was originally going to be a bypass, but a lot of people don't approve of the bypass idea of a downtown because of the business effects to it. So when one of the Valley Springs Community Plan was going on and consultants were involved, another alignment was designed to not really avoid the town altogether, is to show you, it brought you in closer to town. It showed you the town. You came over here, you saw the town, so you could go straight, or if you didn't want to go town, okay, you could go around this bicep. It was a tighter curvature, so it was designed to facilitate people either going into town or not. So it wasn't so far out of town that you kind of didn't see the attractive downtown there. So again, that wasn't exactly a bypass at that time. They called that an alternate route. And so at one time there was a talk of, well, the highway would change from one alignment to another, and I don't know, that affects the funding of the roads or something. So there was
a beltway concept.
I don't know if that term was ever used, but it was not called a bypass because people didn't want a bypass. They wanted an alternate route. So that was another way of looking at it. And then, as you mentioned, Mr. Tuno, there have been various development projects that have come through with pieces of the bypass proposed as part of their development to facilitate the development. So this development over here said, well, let me come in and I'll give you the right-of-way for a road over here. And that would maybe tie in with that. And then another development came in and they actually showed a different alignment.
Colleen?
Yes.
There's a lot of detail there. I don't know that we need all of that. I'm just
sorry. I just do, okay, so I basically.
Bring it on back around.
Yeah, okay, so we are supposed to be on goals and policies in the roadway system, C 2.24, and I support that for all of the above reasons, and I want to thank Peter for putting that on the map finally, because we've been working for that for years to get that. You can't get funding unless you get it on the map and in the plan. So there was other things I was going to talk about, but 2 hours is too long to keep it all in here, so thank you.
Thank you.
There
Any
was
questions?
nothing you objected to strongly, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to show support and give other ideas for, like, the benefit basins.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Colleen.
you. Well, it's interesting, actually, I had that. Oh, was there anybody else? No. I kind of had the same thought when we were talking about benefit basins, and that what is the relationship, between, the rim fees and the benefit basins? And, I mean, maybe some description of that and how they come into play, and that's what, it's like how many of them are there. But, one question is like, why don't we have benefit basins for location-specific, collection of fees, and then like the rim fee could be for the general countywide stuff? I mean, just a thought, I'm just saying, it seems to me that, that would solve where the money's spent.
Apportionment issue,
That's right.
Yes, the
Yeah.
rim fee,
I agree.
but even the rim fee, there has to be an apportionment component to that.
There could be, yes.
Because of,
I mean, there still has to be a nexus and a relationship to the impact, yes. But still, it's like in Peter's example, it was like, all right, you got 5,000 new homes, you're going to need a new bus shelter in Valley Springs and one in, Paloma, that kind of thing. It could go beyond just one basin, but you'd still have to show the impact.
Well, the basin is a better idea than raising the fees, because then you've got money being kept in each area. But as far as that rim fee, the specific rim fee that's county-wide that we're talking about, so when someone builds a new house or they put in a new business or development, because it goes across the board, I understand how that money can't be spent in where it's collected, and it has to be a collection of funds to get a project done, because you'll never get anything done, David, if you don't have a collection of funds. It costs way too much to do a project. But we could be looking at making sure that the projects are being done a little bit of everywhere, not just in one area.
So we're not going to, create the manual on this today, but I think that certainly that I think it would be important to include that whole sort of, fee update, fee analysis, fee update, RIM, benefit basin, having to do with circulation, include that all in this one.
Yeah, I was going to suggest we just add regularly update road impact mitigation or other or benefit basin or other impact fees.
Okay. I'll quit screaming.
How are you going to read that again, please?
Regularly update the road impact mitigation, comma, benefit basin, comma, or other impact fees to keep up with inflation, blah, blah, blah. And correlate, let's see, to adjust the changing construction costs, economic situations, and to correlate, there was language, Kelly, you
I
had
think
as
it
far
was
as correlating with.
correlate distributions with
With
collections.
collections.
Correlate distribution.
I mean, I think that addresses it, but I think what we're, you know, what I'm hearing is that there would be more of a comprehensive overhaul. I don't think this gets at a comprehensive overhaul, but I don't know that that's where we have it, you know, we put it in there, but,
Well, if you're looking at the amounts and the formulas, did we talk about formula? I mean,
Yeah, he kind of.
well, equitable sort of collections with distributions, yeah.
and distribution, I'm fine with that, but by law, let me ask you this, by law, does the RIM fee, do the collections have to go into the general fund?
Yes.
We cannot have a,
Well,
An
I spoke too quickly. I'm not sure. I think that,
I'm bringing up Mr. McManus's gas tax analogy, which is
yeah.
a real,
No, it cannot. It must be used for identified road improvements that are funded through the RIM fee.
It can't go for
It
the,
can't
pay
go-
the sheriffs or
so
your
it's
salary.
isolated for road
Yeah.
improvements.
Yes,
Yes.
And it
yes.
just depends on what we call road improvement.
It's like a county
Be-
fund
be-
account.
Because it is a fee and not a tax,
Ah.
it has to be directly correlated to the cost of the improvement,
Right.
the effect, the impact of that new development with those improvements, and can only be used for that purpose.
And so now we just have to make sure that we have an equitable system of distribution and et cetera. And we're going to be doing that.
So the other possibility is we add a program that says, consider establishment of new benefit basins to facilitate equitable distribution of traffic impact fees. Or traffic improvement funds or something, whatever the term would be.
Transportation improvement funds?
Transportation improvement funds.
There's no
Yes.
harm in that. I think
Right.
that's a good idea.
So the goal is to facilitate the development of additional,
Benefit
Benefit
basins,
basins.
where that's where the money is, has to be low, it's spent where it's collected.
absolutely.
All right, so shall we take a break?
Well, can I have one question
Yes.
before I forget it?
Yes.
If you're in like Copperopolis or Valley Springs and you have these benefit basin fees, how is that interrelated with the RIM fee? In other words, is there any kind of a credit given if you pay one, then you go to pay the other?
Well, that sort of gets at my question
No.
about what is the relationship between the two of them?
There, it's on top of, the RIM fee is countywide and addresses countywide road improvements. And so there is a list of improvements, probably primarily to the state highways that pays for. And then within those other areas, particularly Copperopolis and Valley Springs, where we were seeing the bulk of the development in the early 2000s,
It's on top of.
separate benefit basins were identified to address more local road needs. So, you know, some of the other road improvements were just, you know, so the people from McCollum Hill aren't going to be driving, you know, a
Right.
lot on some of these other roads, Olive Orchard and or, you know, these other roads that are identified in the benefit basin.
Enhancement projects.
Yes, to accommodate new development.
Because again, I mean, you could have a basin, but if there's no
Yeah.
development, there's no fee. I mean,
Right.
nobody's going to pay anything unless you're actually doing something new.
But as I understand Mr. Wooster's question, it gets at the notion of, are these people paying twice?
They're paying for separate improvements.
Well,
They're paying for
If-
the generalized countywide road improvements as well as specialized local improvements that are necessary to serve the development.
but if the general countywide improvements include the same kind of projects that they are going to pay for in their basin fee.
So is there
then
double
they're paying
dipping?
twice.
Yeah, then they're double dipping, but that would not be, we couldn't do that.
Okay.
And I'm,
It has to be, there has to be a formula where
They're
funds
separated.
are separate and allocations are
Right. You
separate.
can't
and
get
there's
dinged
no-
twice.
There's no double pays.
no.
Kelly doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
Who's going to write that one?
All right, so,
That's, I mean, it has to be that way.
Okay.
You just can't create a road fund that does that.
Okay.
all right, you ready for a break?
Yes.
So we're recessed till 3. Peter wanted to bring up another comment that Colleen had mentioned regarding Valley Springs, so I'm just going to turn it over.
This is on policy C 2.24, page 14, the word bypass may have a negative connotation, and I think the term that Colleen used was alternate route. I think it also gets to Commissioner Tuno's idea that it's not just a bypass, but it has.
I go with that.
So I would, a future alternate route through Valley
Yeah.
Springs.
Good job, Colleen. Yeah. All right, so I think we're good with that. All right, now we're moving back to page 14.
Oh,
No.
No?
Yes.
Yeah, goals and
Yes.
policies, public transit.
Well, before we get there, I'm not sure we
What you,
settled on C-1C on
Okay.
page 17. And I had a question about that, following up on Mr. McManus's comments. And that is call them the new categories of impacts that would be included when you're determining the impact fee to be assessed, which are described here. Would those be impacts outside of the development? Because McManus made the point that you can rely on the developer to do this kind of stuff inside, within his development.
my,
So typically, the way it works, if there's an improvement that's funded through an impact fee, if that is within the project or necessary now to serve the project, that would be something that the developer would build, and they would get credit for those improvements against those fees. If it was more than their fair share of the fees, they would still need to build it, and they would get reimbursed as money comes in from other development. That's the way it typically works. And so if it's an identified funded improvement, so here's a list of all the improvements that the benefit basin is funding, and one of those is necessary for that project or desirable for that project, that would be built by the developer and credit given for those improvements.
but could it also be, let me say, could it also be that you're going to have to put up a new street light?
Well, only if streetlights is a part of the
Of a
the
road widening or
full range
something, right?
of improvements that we've identified.
Right.
So
So
only-
that's not something, maybe the time isn't quite right, they don't need to put it up right now, but they know that they're going to need it.
Well, those would typically be internal development requirements, either desired by the applicant or required by the county.
Right.
I don't know that we require streetlights anywhere, but if...
Oh, I'm sorry, stoplight.
A stoplight.
A stoplight, yeah.
Yeah, so if we have an intersection improvement.
Right.
And because of the traffic generated by that project, well, let me step back. We know we're going to need a traffic light at some intersection sometime in the future based on all the development happening in that basin. And it just so happens that this project triggers the need for that now, rather than maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, then yeah, that traffic light would be required as a condition of approval for that project. But because it's part of the basin-funded list of projects, they would get credit for that. And they would not have to pay the fee on top of that, or whatever the balance is. If it's a, $100,000 fee and it's an $80,000 project, then they pay $20,000. If it's the reverse of that, they built the project, they have credit of $20,000, and as other fee is collected, they get reimbursed for that over expense.
You used the phrase basin there a couple times.
It would also apply to RIM.
Okay. C-1C is rim, not basin, correct?
This is impact fee programs, which would be, could also be benefit basin.
Okay, what I'm trying to get at is this, and I'm not doing a very good job of it. To the extent that a park and ride lot or bicycle and pedestrian facilities and so forth is within the development, I think I understand Mr. McManus's point to be the developer will take care of that. The money doesn't have to go to the county and maybe come back or maybe not come back and so forth.
Or come back more expensively.
Will come back more expensively. I understand that. But I also, if it's actually included as part of the development, the developer doesn't pay twice for it, correct?
Correct.
If he's doing it, but is it included then in the formula for the fee?
It's included in the formula for the fee. So there is a list of improvements, and if park and ride lots is a part of that list of improvements, and it just so happens that the best location for a park and ride lot is where this proposed development is going to be, and the developer then, dedicates the land and maybe even constructs the park and ride lot, then that value is credited against the fees that he would otherwise have to pay.
Okay, and that happens now, doesn't it?
That happens now.
Okay, now, put that aside. What is this doing in addition to what's already happening now? Is this then including impacts of this nature that's outside the development, and that's not what's happening now?
No, right now, the benefit basin and RIM programs are only looking at roads. Just the road travel surface necessary to accommodate vehicles, and is not looking at park and ride or sidewalks or other things. And this would not be something that would be, again, these would have to be something that is general impact of all the development to that benefit basin or to the county as a whole. And so if there is something, say, we're going to require a widening of a road, and right now the RIM fee is only looking at sort of edge of pavement for travel surface. But because of where that road is located and the other uses around it, there ought to be a pedestrian way, either a sidewalk or some side path that also allows people to move in that corridor from the school to the shopping area or wherever it may be. That should be also included in those improvements. So the additional cost of a sidewalk would be calculated into the overall fee because it's necessary to serve future development. Yeah, it's specific to that area, but there may be other areas in the county that also need that improvement that would benefit circulation of people and goods throughout the county.
And in your judgment, is it worth including this provision to capture those costs?
Yes.
Okay, and did you have other language to include? I think you had some other language.
Yeah, so the language that I had was consider transit capital improvements and non-auto travel improvements necessary to serve new development in impact fee programs to fund public transportation infrastructure, park and ride lots, and bicycle and pedestrian facilities associated with the new development.
Okay, got it.
Good.
I just want to ask the question in a different way now that you've said all that, because it got more confusing. This fee that we're talking about, this impact fee here, can be used for off-site improvements. It would not necessarily be in that
It's
development.
almost always used for off-site improvements.
Okay, that's what I thought. I don't approve of that.
With respect to those projects that the developer can do, and he offsets his basin fee or his RIM fee, either one.
Yeah.
The RIM fee establishes what that project should cost. Sidewalks all throughout there. If the developer can do that for himself, presumably it's because he can save money.
No, I think that, if the developer, if the county has a requirement that sidewalks be included in the development, that's the developer's responsibility. If there is no sidewalk requirement, but the developer wants to do that, that's fine. The rim or basin-funded projects has to be those that benefit the basin as a whole or the county as a whole. So localized sidewalk improvements could not be included in the fee program. There'd have to be something that is a part of the major road system or circulation system that benefits the entirety of that region for which the money is collected. So if it's a benefit basin, it has to be something, say it's Valley Springs. Pedestrian connectivity between Center Valley Springs and La Contenta, for example, may be something that would be programmed into the overall fee program. It would be, we would have to look at, and it has to be very carefully developed for sidewalk improvements, for example. The example I used earlier, that clearly show the connection, the nexus between the regional transportation and the need for pedestrian circulation. So the study that needs to go into developing the fee, it can't just simply say, oh, we want a sidewalk over here, so we're going to add it to it. You have to show a very clear nexus between the new development and the impact of that and the improvements that are being required.
Or it's an outside project.
Yeah. So the internal improvements, unless it's something, so let's say we've identified on this major collector road that we're going to need to widen the road to accommodate traffic, and because of where it's located, also needs a sidewalk. That's going to be included in the overall rim fee program or basin program. If it happens that the developer is developing that piece of property that fronts that road, and that's where the sidewalk needs to go, then that would be something that they would likely build, or at least reserve the right-of-way for it. And then, if they built it, they would get credit or reimbursed for those improvements if it exceeded their fee amount.
But they can't do the building outside of their development.
They could. It could be a situation where, because where it's located and the amount of traffic that's going to go out onto this other road, so, you can't support that development without those road improvements. So they may need to make those road improvements, but if it's a basin or rim fee identified project, they would get credit for that as well. So any improvements they do that would otherwise be funded by a fee program, they would get credit for that. And it could be on-site or it could be off-site. It just depends on what the traffic analysis says, where the impacts are, and to what degree it's necessary to immediately serve this project, and not sort of more general, well, it's necessary at some point in time in the future, there's a cumulative impact, and by paying their fair share of the costs, it'll be mitigated.
Okay.
Just sort of a threshold of, because of the size of the project or where it's located, that's needed now to serve that project.
That's different.
Okay.
So we have,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
we have the road impact mitigation fee for the county. Then you have a basin fee for some areas that have established it. And now we're going to have a third impact fee for the...
No, what this is saying is that as a part of looking at the improvements that those fees are paying for, let's look beyond just the road. Let's look at, are there other transportation needs that's based on that new development that needs to be included?
So would this impact fee go into the basin? If it's not an immediate need that they have to build out?
It could be, depending on what the improvement is and what the impact is, it could be added to the basin fee, it could be added to the rim fee.
It has to go up. The rim fee will go up. when
The rim
you
fee is
add
likely to
more
go up.
Projects that are listed as rim fee eligible projects. It has to go up.
Is that rim fee is a flat fee?
I believe it's based on square footage for commercial and industrial use and flat fee for residential use.
Yes.
So it's based on traffic generation. So a typical residence creates, 8 to 10 vehicle trips per day, and, retail commercial is X number of trips per 100 square feet. So there's a calculation that goes into it. And so the more traffic that's generated by the use, the more impact they have on the roads.
So you're not asking for a third impact fee, you're asking for the fees to be raised to have a nexus allotted for this specific
To
cause.
reflect the costs of more than just the roads.
Got it.
But they have to be related to that project, have to be related to impacts associated with that project. So it's not going to be, something, it has to look at, if it's a rim fee, what are the
It's not based on the
countywide,
needs of the
broad-scale
counties.
impacts?
Not based on the needs of the county or the wants of the county, but strictly on the impact of the project.
Right.
Okay, now, with respect to rim versus basin. Basin is supposed to be for enhancements only, correct?
Well, it's more localized improvements necessary to support the development. So where the rim fee is looking countywide, very broad scale, the benefit basins are saying, okay, we need to have, there's a lot of development occurring here, we need to look more focused at these roads just in this area.
Okay, but where there isn't a basin, only rim applies. Does that community get the benefit of a basin-type formula such that the rim fees paid in their area are concentrated, if you will, on their area? Or do they?
They don't. There isn't. The only way to do that would be to form a new benefit basin, and then maybe some of those rim improvements get transferred into the benefit basin instead.
So for those people who don't have a basin, their fees go into the county coffers, and they hope to get some of them back in the way of projects that they need for their area.
Or they'll be spent on the broader scale of roads that they use occasionally or maybe regularly, depending on their traffic patterns.
I think the language we added to C-2E was supposed to try to address that. The
Right.
correlating the distributions with the collections.
So as we review the fee programs, we'll look at those and what's going to be the most beneficial to the communities and the county as a whole.
You're right. So in 2E, the hoped-for result is that rim fees get treated more or less like basin fees.
Somewhat similar to.
I don't think,
Or at least there's some ability to identify, I think you're right. It's still, it's challenging because it is a county-wide fee. And so it applies county-wide and is spent county-wide.
But there could be some
there-
tracking and
there could be some
accountability
tracking,
and some targets about, creating that equitable distribution.
And maybe it's, by supervisorial district, and hey, you
Yeah.
guys have had the improvements for the last 20 years, and I've never seen anything in District 2, so when am I going to get my improvements? Or the response could be, well, there's no development occurring in that district, that's why it's all going to District 1 instead. Those are the kind of debates that occur when the funds are allocated to various projects.
If 2E resulted in formula for distribution that was very much like a basin-type formula, then you wouldn't need basin fees. Those people, or if you did have them, those people are paying twice.
I think that you need to have both because there are localized roads that are
Special
impacted by development within a community that are arguably not impacted by regional county-wide traffic. But within those basins, there are regional roads, the arterials, the major collectors, that aren't just associated with the people that live there, but they're the people that are driving through. And so everyone has to pay their share of that traffic.
Burson Road's a very good example. It's in that basin that Colleen lives in, but it's used by lots of people. It's
Yeah,
a bypass.
I don't know what roads are rim-funded and which ones are basin-funded. But clearly, any improvements to the state highway is probably rim-funded.
It's not state highway, I don't think.
I
Burson Road is not a state
No,
highway.
Brisbne's not a state highway. So we're talking 12, 26, 49, and 4. That any improvements to those are probably, if we're collecting money for improvements for state highway improvements, they're RIM fee. If we're collecting money for local roads, and there could be some of these, major collectors that are, and if you want, we can get a list of, here are all the roads that are, here's the current list of improvements that are being funded by, it might be a good thing to have in the background report.
I know that we're not going to solve the problem, but I'm satisfied that at least these two components tell the county that we want to look at the formulas, we want to look at the distributions, we want to look at the cost and the fees.
I would agree.
And that's as far as we can go with this.
I think so at this point, yes. Not until we actually get into those programs.
Okay, well, with, with the changes to C-1C, I think that's acceptable to me.
Okay. Are we good with this? All right, so we are back to page 14, Goals and Policies, Public Transit.
Just a second, please. Oh. Wait a second.
I don't have any notes on these.
3.5,
I have something on one.
go ahead.
Okay.
3.1 has been changed to say, maintain a county-wide transit system, et cetera. County-wide, to me, means it covers the whole county. And I don't think what we have does, and I don't think we should be having a policy to try to cover the whole county with a public transit system. Seems to me it would be better to say, maintain a county transit system without trying to describe how wide it's going to be.
I think that was the intent, and if wide makes it seem like you're,
That you're going to have service to every little nook and cranny of the county.
Right.
Okay. We can go with that.
okay,
So what was the word you used?
just strike wide.
Right.
Oh, good, okay.
So next,
3.5.
someone had someone on 3.5?
David?
Oh,
I'm sorry, but I'm having a problem with 3.2 here. I had a previous note on that I didn't see it included in the edit version, so I'm going to kind of repeat my note to Peter. You can discuss it with me. Is that encourage the expansion of public transit services to nearby urban areas in order to reduce automotive dependency, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do we have any studies that indicate an expansion of the service in that respect is needed, desired, would be used? Have we got a justification for
maybe
the-
it needs your where practicable.
Well, no,
Well-
We're justified it by economics. How about
they actually recently did do a study.
Yeah,
on
there
our
is a
busing
recent, in fact,
system,
it-
And they're actually doing further outreach, and it doesn't have to necessarily be special needs. It could be our older patients that need to get to doctor's appointments and things like that. And I believe the busing system is doing outreaches in that area now.
The county just adopted a transit, what was the name of the, short-range transit plan that looked at the need, and yes, there is definitely a need for transit interconnection, intercity connection. We just opened up that line to Stockton to accommodate Delta College, or students from here to go into Delta College. I think that we could strike the such as residents with special needs
Right,
line
just leave
from there.
residents.
Just residents. Mobility for county residents, period. So there's all kinds of people that
Needs, with needs.
that ride the bus.
Right.
So there was a study,
That's showing that there is a need for expansion of,
and subsequent to that study, a line was put in.
to serve Delta College. That's what it
Well,
sounds like.
there are ongoing studies. The decision to add that line is something that's been in the works for a number of years. Just recently, the county, the Department of Public Works Department, the transit program, worked with COG and developed a short-range transit plan that looked at, how do we use our limited resources, what's the best use of that, and identified, connectivity to Tuolumne and Amador and Stanislaus and San Joaquin County or San Joaquin County are important connections for citizens using the system.
Okay, but are you saying that there was a line added subsequent to the study?
Not subsequent to the study, but as a result of previous studies that showed people would use and benefit from a line going to Stockton.
Okay, then what I would like to see is where a study has been done and we spend money and we add lines that are responsive to that study, that we look back and see, did the results match what the study said the need was, so that we can correlate the two. Was the study accurate? Or are we getting one student per trip where we thought we were going to get 20?
Hopefully that
Is
sort of
there-
an analysis is going on.
Well, hopefully it is, but in as much as we're saying we want to expand the system, do we also want to make sure that we are looking at whether or not the system is meeting a projected need or whether the projection's wrong?
That's done and is required of the transit system. Yeah, and it's the counties.
And the people that are in charge of deciding whether or not it's an accurate study are the people that made the study?
No. The county Public Works Department that operates the transit system worked with COG, and that was reviewed by the COG board and by the Board of Supervisors. Say, yeah, this is good information. This is how we should spend our money, on transit. There's of course federal and state funding that goes along with that, and I'm not sure I'm making sense here to myself anymore.
Okay.
But you could say, as demand increases, encourage the expansion of public transit services.
I think what David is getting at is that, we might add this line and then say, no one's using it. Well, if no one's using it, it gets dropped.
Right.
And that's part of the problem, is that a handful of people use certain lines, like up to West Point, for example. It wasn't cost effective. It wasn't even cost effective with all of the subsidies that go along with it. It was dropped. The handful of people that needed it are up in arms. So what can we do to try to meet that need without spending an exorbitant amount of money? Well, I think the solution was there's sort of a on-call basis of dial-a-ride kind of van pooling rather than running a whole bus line up there. It's very expensive to run the buses up there.
So they're working on a solution to replace the line that they...
Constantly evolving as the need exists. And maybe under the implementation, we add something that basically references the, regular update for transit planning. I don't know what the language is. We're doing it anyway.
Matching demand.
But just to, just sort of identify that's an ongoing program that we do.
I'm good down to 3.5.
Okay.
And on that one, I would like to see language that that is, indicates proportional requirement on the part of the new development toward this goal.
Well, if I could chime in on that one, I don't even understand what it means. How do you ensure that a new development incorporates local and regional transit measures into the project design? What does that mean?
That's a better question than mine. Thank you.
They could, they could be responsible for putting up a new, pretty, fancy bus stop for people to get on and off.
Well, local and regional transit measures, what are they?
It could be your school buses, it could be your county transit, could it not?
Well, it wouldn't necessarily, I mean, I think what this is really sort of focused on is more commercial development, so when they design it, if there is, we look at our transportation plans, so, this is right on the main line, let's make sure that, the bus, designs where the buses go in there and drop people off, they may want to go shopping there. Or, it could be a convenient pickup place for people going somewhere else.
Well, I guess
Transit measures, though, I see what you're saying, that's sort of an awkward term.
I don't know what it means in this context.
Yeah.
Let me help you out here. Okay, ensure that new developments incorporate project designs plural, that accommodate the use of alternative modes of transportation.
Well,
How
there's
about
like
promote is better than accommodate, because accommodate means you're going to do it. We're promoting it. It's a little bit easier to,
Well, because it's, wait a minute.
I'm just,
I know.
well, accommodate, or I'm saying if you need a bus stop, the project accommodates the need for the bus stop. That's my word for it. But it takes out this local and regional transportation measures. It just says, if you've got a new development, and here's where I think maybe this proportional issue comes in. Not every new development needs to have a bus stop or accommodate regional transportation needs, but where it has some size, then it's reasonable that residents of that development would utilize public transportation, let's say. A few houses, you don't have a bus stop for that. It's got to have a certain size to it, and that's what I'm trying to get at.
Right.
Well, I'm just trying to find the relationship between the bus stop and the bicycle riding or walking, right? I mean, you're saying, a design
Well,
that incorporates, like, basically a transit measure be a bus stop into the project that promotes the use of alternative modes of transportation, so.
but this is the public transit component of the circulation element, and this was aimed at public transit.
Right, so I'm just saying, it's late, I'm not getting it. I'm not getting the relationship between the bus stop and a bicycle rider.
I don't think this doesn't speak to that. Why would it need to?
Maybe it should, and maybe it needs to go into the general policy section that says that when we look at the design of new development, we make sure that where it's appropriate, a bus stop is included, or, that it accommodates bikes or accommodates pedestrians. If you've got a shopping center that's next to a residential area, can the people walk from the residential area to the market, or they have to get in their car to drive to it? That could be an alternate mode of transportation.
Isn't that a complete street concept?
It really sort of is.
I mean, the whole
Then
thing
it's
is like
already
a little.
1.1.
Yeah.
And maybe that's,
It's under
and
public
And
transit, and I think
doesn't, I'm still like,
the fact that it's under public transit, I think is what's throwing us off.
I think it's not located in the right place.
I think that it belongs elsewhere.
so
Well,
either
can't we
belongs.
just chop it out, because it's already, if complete street concepts, which the definition of I don't completely understand, but I know it's very broad,
We changed it.
okay.
Well, actually, we haven't got one yet. It's going to be described
If it's
consistent with the statute.
if it's defined to include public transportation, alternative modes of transportation, yada, 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 then Circ 1.1 addresses it.
Well, because what this might mean, and I'm not sure, and maybe I don't, I mean, it's strange to me, but it could also be a project design, for example, would that include like a bike rack?
You know, if you.
I mean,
It could be, yeah.
If you read the implementation measure that goes with
Yeah.
that, coordinate with Calaveras Transit when reviewing development projects to determine if transit stops or other public transit facilities should be incorporated into the design of the project. It makes more sense that way. Because basically what it's saying is we're going to be talking to Calaveras Transit. They're going to have studies. They're constantly doing studies. What's working, what's not. Would that be an area that would help? It kind of ties it in better.
Which implementation measure are you looking at, Lisa,
I
please?
am looking at C3C. C3C, excuse me.
Well, but it's not identified as the implementation measure for this particular policy.
Number 5,
You're looking at the
3.5.
old
yes, it
version.
is.
I have, it's getting late, we're getting tired.
So, I mean,
3.5. Thank you. There it is.
Sorry.
Yeah.
so maybe it's just ensured that new developments incorporate both local and regional transit measures into project design.
Well,
No.
local and regional transit measures,
Is what
it's
needs to
just a
go.
phrase that doesn't fit what we're trying to do here.
If we ensure that new developments, I think what Kelly had said earlier, ensure that new developments incorporate measures into the project design that promote the use of alternative modes of transportation, removing both local and regional transit, and then if you go to the implementation measure, it says what you're going to do to incorporate.
I'm fine with that.
Let's have the language again, if you can.
And all I did, Kelly, was take what you said and removed both local and regional transit
Transit measures.
measures and left it at, ensure that new developments incorporate measures into the project design that promote the use of alternative modes of transportation. I took your words.
Actually, I don't think it was me, but I like it.
Okay.
All right, I'm good with that.
Must have
too.
been me then.
Okay.
Is there anything else on public transit?
Not for me.
All right, so I'm going to ask the question now on, because are there a lot of comments on airports and non-motorized?
Non-motorized there will be.
Okay, so maybe we should go right now, then let's go to the implementation measures for public transit, just so that we keep our continuity here.
Page.
And then we'll take public comment.
19.
Okay, so
So they are public transit implementation programs, C3A.
I don't have any notes on the
don't either.
implementation measures. Or programs, we call it,
Okay.
for that section.
I don't either.
All right, so we'll have public comment? Yes? Public transit?
Don't be shy.
Bill McManus, Calaveras Project. As far as the bus line, the Delta line or whatever it is going to Stockton, as I remember, depending on where you live at in the county, on your property tax bill, we're spending money and sending it to either Columbia JC or Delta College, or Delta JC. And those were supposed to be to fund campuses, satellite campuses here in the county, so that our local students could attend either one of those schools. They've been collecting the money for a long time. I don't know how much it is, but we don't have any real satellite campuses here, and yet we're paying to bus people to Stockton so that they can pay tuition fees to Delta College to go to school there. Now, it kind of seems like if we're going to provide the transportation to Stockton or to Columbia, whichever the case may be, that because they've collected so much money from us and have provided almost nothing, that maybe they should supplement the transportation fees for our transit system to get the students there and back. And maybe that's in process already, I don't know. But it doesn't hardly seem fair that we should be paying for all this, and a school in another county, whether it be San Joaquin County or Tuolumne County, is getting the benefit of it. So it'd be nice if that situation kind of got straightened out a little bit so that we get some value for our money. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right.
No.
Shall we, value and fairness is always a good idea. I don't know that we can address that,
It's a political issue.
well, and, yeah, I mean, a lot of people that would agree that we're not getting, basically our money's worth from that special tax we're paying for service, educational service.
But they are trying to open satellite campuses, and they've got some
Yes.
classes that they're
They do,
establishing,
like
so
Calaveras
it's a start
High,
in the right
and yes,
direction.
they do,
Yeah.
they do. All right, so we're going to move on back to aviation, page
15?
15, airports, goals and policies.
I don't have any notes on that one.
Nothing for me. I thank Peter for including the one note that I did have.
All right, so are there any comments on the implementation programs associated with that on page 19?
Well, let's, hang on.
Nope.
I'm good.
All right.
The 4.3, the new one, does not have a program associated with it.
Well, it could be part of C-4D with the airport land use compatibility plan. Well, maybe.
Yeah, that's not really
Maybe not.
what
No,
that's
it doesn't
aimed at.
really get it either, yeah.
Well, if someone wants to think up a program we could do to, David, that was your suggestion?
It was my suggestion here, and I don't know where the expertise lies, but other than Kathy at the airport, who's a really good airport manager, by the way, it might be a project that you kind of, I see two different things that can happen here. One is you have an airport manager who knows what's going on with other airports and says, hey, they're doing a pretty neat thing down in Lodi that we could do here, right? For example, we only offer one fuel for airplanes there. It's 100 low lead. That's what most every airplane uses. But the big boys use Jet A. And if you had Jet A, if the airport manager could kind of conceive, hey, if we had Jet A, we would get traffic into our airport for that fuel because hardly anybody else is offering it, and we're on a route that a lot of people fly. As an example, I'm just hypothetically. Okay, then it would make sense to plop a Jet A tank in there and make a bunch of money selling Jet A. Otherwise, you have the possibility of utilizing the land, and I don't know how much of it there is around the airport that the county owns, associated with the airport, that's not being used for anything. I don't know what the boundaries are, but if there's land there that's not being used for anything, the primary use should be airport related. But sometimes you get a little bit further away from the airport, and you really aren't going to have an airport related function, but nevertheless it's valuable land that's industrially zoned. So where you have a shortage of industrial zone of land, and you've got a chunk of it sitting next to your airport, you could use it for that.
So you could say work with or partner with the airport manager or the airport board or whoever they are to identify opportunities to attract and expand airport-related development.
Airport and non-airport related development, and that's where,
But on their land, typically, even if you have land, you have to lease land, it has to be an airport-related use. Now, I don't know if that's true here, but a
Not
lot of
necessarily.
airports you do.
and I've been to I'm a pilot, I've been to lots of airports, and sometimes even on the airport, you get a non-airport related, a non-aviation related business. But in fairness, I believe airports should be, for airplanes, but as soon as you get about a block or so away, it doesn't need to be an airplane anymore because an airplane can't get there. So it can be any other kind of a business that just happens to need space.
So you could
and
say-
the buildings that they put up for these kinds of businesses are not what you'd want in the middle of your town. They're metal buildings and, they're fabrications, steel fab, metal fab, whatever. It could be automotive related, that sort of thing.
So you could say to identify opportunities to attract and expand appropriate development, whatever appropriate is.
Yeah, I mean,
And they're the ones to determine what appropriate is in terms of how it.
And who you bring into the study mix, I don't know.
But that would be their call, but that we could partner with them if we needed to, or, I mean, that could be an implementation measure.
How did you, what was your
You
language?
could say partner with or work with the airport manager, and I don't know if she's the appropriate one, if there's an airport board or airport.
Well, the airport manager is a county employee, right?
Yes.
And there's a county-owned, county-operated airport.
Yes.
So we're not really working with it, we are.
Working with ourselves.
Yeah, we could say promote use of airport land to,
We're appropriate to attract and retain new development.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I would give people another example of what's done typically
that?
on an airport.
Pretty much.
There are frequently restaurants, and they're aviation-themed restaurants, and that's, the pilots, eat there. Pilots actually fly to airports where there's a cafe. It's called the $100 hamburger, because it costs you $100 to buy the damn thing once you fly your airplane there and back. But these places are very popular, and they actually look on the map, and there's a guide that pilots use. Oh, they've got a cafe. Hey, everybody, let's go fly to Merced, whatever. Now, it's also because this airport happens to be in a really choice spot, by the way, on a hilltop. It's excellent. It is better than most airports. It might be a prime spot for somebody to build a really cool themed restaurant that would be a destination restaurant, not just for pilots, but for anybody. It's just that I'm just saying that these airports have possibilities that people who don't fly wouldn't necessarily realize.
So I think we agree with you. Do we agree with this new implementation program? Okay.
I liked your words. That
All
was
right.
broad enough, and
I
Kathy
maybe
might
add a
take me notes.
few.
Okay.
Promote the use of airport land to attract and retain airport-appropriate land uses consistent with the ALUCP.
Sounds perfect.
Which is the
What- the
air-
airport
Airport land
land
use
use plan.
compatibility plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, because you have to be certain safety things, you don't want to have a use that's high occupancy
Right.
use in case there's an
Sure.
accident. Okay, so that
Sounds
would be
good.
for
We're good?
C.
So what's left is non-motorized transportation, but do you want to tackle that?
Let's tackle it.
You want to, okay, but we are finishing by 5 today. So let's go to page 15, non-motorized transportation.
Okay, I have comments, issues with goal C-5,
Okay?
which reads, "A safe, comprehensive, and integrated system of transportation facilities for pedestrians, cyclists, and other non-motorized modes of transportation." This is not limited, of course, to within communities. This is throughout the whole county. And comprehensive means to me throughout the whole county. Integrated means it all has to tie together. And I do not think that this is a realistic goal, given our topography the existing roads that we have, the steep hills, the curves, the narrow roads. To me, this is simply not, it does not fit this county. I do have an alternative suggestion that I think would.
All right, let's hear it.
A safe, convenient transportation network for pedestrians, bicyclists, and users of other non-motorized modes of transportation that is suitable to the rural nature of the county and its topography.
I'm good.
I like it a lot.
Well, I don't think there's, I mean, I like the other goal too, even though, I mean, because it is just a goal. It's not saying it's, I mean, it's what we're striving to, but I could live with yours, Kelly.
Shall I read it again?
Sure.
Please.
A safe, convenient transportation network for pedestrians, bicyclists, and users of other non-motorized modes of transportation that is suitable to the rural nature of the county and its topography.
We good?
Thank you.
All right. So policies? Do you have any problem with that, Peter?
No.
Okay.
I have one suggestion on 5.5, and that's to add where appropriate at the end, because not all residential projects necessarily would need safe routes to school. I think it's sort of consistent with what you've been talking about. Safe routes to school should be incorporated into new residential projects where appropriate. If it's not near a school, there's not going to be a safe route to school. So,
Right.
Can you read, why did I just read it?
Are there any? Are you guys reading them, or are there?
Well, 5.3 is almost the same as our goal.
Well, I think what that is saying is that we look at transportation improvement projects. The county has a CIP to say, okay, we're going to widen this road. We consider, does it make sense to add a bike lane here? Does it make sense to add a pedestrian facility? Should a sidewalk be in this? That's what that goal is getting, that policy is getting at.
Were you talking about 5.3 just now?
Yeah.
Okay, my problem is that 5.2 and 5.4 sound an awful lot alike. Can you explain to me the difference? And 5.4 doesn't have an implementation measure, so I'm assuming it's the same implementation measure anyway.
I would have to say it is duplicative
Keep 5.4 and get rid of 5.2?
and move the implementation down to that one. The only thing that the difference is that one references bike ped master plan or whatever plan we might have adopted for bikes. And so the idea here is that we have an overall plan. This is what we'd like to see. And development that comes in, we sort of review that plan. Oh, we've said we want to have, a bike route through here. So let's make sure it gets designed consistent with that overall plan. It sort of gets back to some of the earlier questions we have. We have these various plans that are never formally adopted. Well, if we adopt a plan, then let's make sure we implement it through, this policy. I think that, and then 5.4 is just looking at sort of more generalized circulation within the development for cyclists and pedestrians.
Well, 5.4 would apply whether or not there's an adopted plan.
Right.
And if you
Or it
don't
could
have
be
a-
an area that's outside of a plan, but we want to make sure that internal to the project itself, people can get, around it by walking or riding a bike.
I mean, I'm just not sure you need 5.2, because if you do have an adopted bicycle and pedestrian plan, wouldn't that govern anyway?
Probably, I guess it gives, sort of advises that there's this other plan out there we need to look at as well, but it's probably not necessary.
I mean, I don't feel strongly about it, I don't think it hurts, but might be redundant.
What is it attached to implementation?
There's only one measure.
5A is adoption of a bike and ped master plan.
Well, I mean, you could combine them, couldn't you? You could say bicycle and pedestrian access and circulation shall be designed into new development projects where applicable to enhance internal circulation and interconnectivity with surrounding uses, and shall be included in new development projects consistent, or something you
How
could,
about, and to implement any adopted bicycle?
yes, something like that, yeah, so it kind of covers both.
And 5.4 didn't have an implementation number on it, so I'm just assuming
It's
that.
going to, well, it's the same one.
Well, those are one of those that are sort of its ongoing implementation. It's not something the county would actually do other than as a project comes through, we say, oh, we need to look at this as far as, it's not a specific action that we're going to adopt this program, or we're going to take certain steps.
But now that it's combined, it
But
will
now
have.
it's combined, it would have that.
Right. Does that work? Okay.
Give it to me again.
So at the end, we would just
End
add
of which one are we playing with?
We are,
5.4,
we're eliminating 5.2, and 5.4 would be revised.
at the end of the sentence to add, and to implement any adopted bicycle and pedestrian plan. Any adopted.
Is that good? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, and was there any comments on the implementation measure?
Let me get there.
Page 20? So it actually implement policy C53 and C54, since there's no C52 anymore.
Well, I guess it's all going to depend upon what's in the plan. The one I saw is pretty ambitious, but that can be handled later.
You've seen one?
Well, probably the ones
Public
that weren't
There
adopted.
there was a draft that was circulated last summer, 2 summers ago.
I think it came across my computer as part of the public comments.
I think I've seen comments that you distributed to us at the beginning of the general plan, right? Yeah.
Well, are we, any,
I mean, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
The devil will be in what's in the plan.
right,
Yeah.
right. So we'll have public comment on non-motorized transportation now.
What's our last thing?
Yes,
That's it.
This is it?
this is it.
We actually did
Pick the
one
comment.
element in one day.
Well,
Wow.
not yet, we're not quite done yet. We're close, but we're,
We just have an item.
public comment,
a little
anyone?
item to come
Anyone? No, all right, so, nobody.
Really?
So, don't entice them.
They're not even going to say goodbye?
Well, they have another opportunity to do that. So are we good with all of the edits and,
Do you want me to
We're
just sort of
gonna
go
have the
through and
one that's gonna
identify? There was one area we wanted to come back. So would it be okay for me to
sure,
summarize what
let's
we've
do a
done?
summary.
So beginning of page 1, we're going to add and perhaps modify the discussion from page 9, I believe it is, dealing with complete streets, and move it into the introduction section. There was some minor, we're going to say, use of private automobiles on page 1. On page 4, I won't get the exact number of benefit basins that we have. I believe it's 3. On page 9, we're going to add the movement of commercial goods to that paragraph that we're incorporating into the beginning.
Right. Movers of commercial goods.
Movers, yes. And the third paragraph, we modified the last sentence, making connections to key destinations
Challenging.
challenging, yes. I had to read it in the context of the whole sentence. It didn't make sense to me without it by itself. Change but to and all.
And have and
And
has.
have and has. In the last paragraph. We're adding the date, or adding adopted by the Board of Supervisors, February 2002, and plans should be updated periodically in the last sentence, and that'll be a separate paragraph.
I think also that you're going to start with a new paragraph.
Yes,
Plans related
Yeah.
to.
Claims related to non-motorized soil
Right.
pollution.
separating it from the equestrian. Yeah.
Okay, we modified the language of policy C 1.1, and I don't think I need to reread all the changes
I don't
we
think
made.
so.
Just, we modified 1.2, 2.1, 2.4, I'm sorry, 2.4,
Oh, I didn't.
and 2.12. We modified 2.3 on the bottom of page 12.
Twice.
Yes,
Okay.
below or below. Grammatical correction to 2.9. 216 and 217 will be coming back with Public Works to explain the rationale for that and what all that means, so.
Did you have 2.9? Was that
I
are
just got it.
needed to
Yeah,
equitably?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
The grammatical change. Made some fairly significant changes to 218. 2.22 was revised, as well as 2.24.
I have 2.3, oh, okay.
Yes, right here.
We struck wide from 3.1, struck the last part of the last sentence at 3.2, and modified 3.5. Goal 5 was revised, as we just discussed. 5.2 has been deleted, and that language, revised language added to 5.4. Under the implementation program, we struck the second part of the third bullet, so it just reads safe road crossings at major intersections. We've modified C-1C.
1B,
Oh,
we
Well,
put
we
back in
kept 1B.
favorably.
We kept
yeah,
it
sorry, we
right.
put favorably
But
back
that's
in,
true,
that's
but
right.
it's not
Yeah.
struck out anymore.
Yeah, it's not struck out, true. 1C was modified, going down to 2E, we added benefit basins and added correlate distribution and what?
With collections.
And collections, yeah. We added a new measure under airports, 4C, about promoting the airport land, and that was it. other
Except
than-
for the map on Circulation 1, we are going to classify what those terms are for each of the road classifications, saying that qualifies for state and federal funding, and add a definition or a kind of a description, right, of how those, what those
Oh, okay.
classifications.
So
on the
that
map.
probably should
It's
be
maybe in
maybe in the
inter-
discussion, in the introduction,
Yes.
or in, let me see, would be the best place, probably where we first reference those maps,
Right,
where we talk
so
about,
people understand.
yeah.
and don't-
Well, okay, so there is a description here, road classification system on page 3. It talks about the minor, major, minor collectors. But what you're saying is that somewhere in that discussion that,
It's not based on or not use, it's not based on, vehicle miles traveled, because that would, as Kelly said, it's misleading. That it's based on other, options for future funding or something. Yeah, it just how they're, why they're classified the way they are using, and most people would think it's like, oh, it's a busy road. Did he get them all?
I think so.
I think so too. All right. Sure, come on up, Colleen. Did you catch something we didn't?
Well, I wrote something down.
All right.
So, under the, it was in the discussion of the RIM fee update and the benefit basin 2E
Okay.
programs. It was right at the end. I think it was just in Peter's response to lots and lots of discussion. I thought he said we were going to add, quote, consider the establishment of new benefit basins.
oh, yes.
Yes,
That was
that's
a
true,
new-
an added one, a
Right.
new one.
Right.
I saw that and I thought, oh, no, I guess we, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
so
we
this
did.
is
Thank you
new
very much. That's a good catch, thanks.
To staff.
All right, so we're done with this, we're good for now, till it comes back, and, all right. So, now we have a public comment period again. Anybody?
Oh, we got 3 minutes of Bill.
A public comment period,
On non-agenda item.
right, non-agenda items. Well, but it's right after Bill. It could have been you, but Bill was faster.
I promise I'm not going to miss any of these.
Did we take public comments on the bicycle business, the non-motorized
Nobody-
transportation?
Yeah, we asked. We invited,
And there weren't any.
right.
I'm astonished. Sorry, Bill.
We bludgeoned.
Oh, you're okay.
Okay, we're timing you.
We are.
Oh, Bill McManus, Calaveras Project. Probably what I should have done this morning with my other 3 minutes that I always look forward to was preface my remarks by why I'm here. As we've seen so many times between this commission and the board, there's a whole different, I don't want to call it a work ethic, but there's an attention to detail here that you don't find in the political arena. And I've complimented you many times on the hard work and heavy lifting that you do for the board. So when you've got an ordinance, a really lousy one, coming your way, and I'm passionate about this, and I read every word and punctuation mark the way you do in the work that involves you. When I bring this information to you, please don't think that it's my belief that you don't perhaps already know it or are aware of it or have read what's going on. I'm not assuming that. I'm not accusing you of not being ready. I have never seen a commissioner tell the chair or the audience that they are not prepared to continue. And it seems to be a regular thing at the Board of Supervisors. I compliment you on your readiness and your attention to detail. What I do with this is go through the ordinances, and if something sticks out for me, if it's a hot item for me, and I'm biased and I'll admit it, I want to bring it to your attention, not that you're going to do anything with it right away, but that somewhere down the line, when you're going through the ordinances that come to you, and you get to that part, maybe I remember something about that, and it may direct you to pay a little bit more attention to it and have a little different view of it rather than just raw ordinance language, which is pretty ugly to read most of the time. So I do it the real reason I do it is if the county ends up going in the toilet because of all this, and afterwards I were to talk to you at a restaurant or a social gathering or on the street or whatever, and if you said to me, God, if I'd known that, I would have voted differently, that would make me feel very bad. So a lot of what I do, almost all of it, is probably redundant. But I do that, I guess for me and for the people that I represent and for those that I want to protect. And I don't mind being redundant, and I don't mind being called tedious, and I've been called everything, and that's fine. but I do it so that hopefully it smooths the process out, and that there's never a regret either on your part or on my part for the job we've been trying to do. So for the remaining meetings left between now and when you get the ordinance, I will be here 3 minutes at a time to highlight some of the things I've discovered, see if you agree with it, and do the things that the board won't do, which is consider the unintended consequences of what these ordinances can do, or this ordinance can do, and to see if you want an opportunity to minimize or eliminate those unintended consequences. So I'm not trying to tell you anything, I'm trying to work with you. And so far, it's been a pleasure working with the Planning Commission, and I'll try not to be too tedious or repetitive, but I'm not going away. So anyway, I thank you for the time.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Richard Van Slyke. I live in Mountain Ranch on Cave City Road, and I need to know if I'm even in the right place or not, but who's making all the laws on these marijuana growers? Is it from the Board of Supervisors, or do I go someplace else? I've got a neighbor.
I believe that we're
Right
going
there.
to be, the ordinance, proposed ordinance will be coming to the Planning Commission. I don't know when.
Okay.
You're in the right spot.
You're
Keep talking.
You're
All
fine.
right. Well, I just got a neighbor that paid cash for 2 parcels. He's got 2 22,000-watt generators pointed toward my house, running 24/7. And I know, yeah, they called the sheriff. They shut them down at 10 o'clock at night. When the sheriff leaves, they fire him back up again to keep his plants warm and toasty, and the grow lights and the heaters and all that kind of stuff. And you call the sheriff back out, he shuts them down, sheriff leaves, turns them back on again. My property, even though it didn't get burned, it's useless. Who's going to buy a house with 2 22,000-watt generators going 24/7? And I know they can only grow 99 plants, but his wife grows 99 plants, he grows 99 plants, his brother-in-law grows 99 plants, his sister-in-law grows 99 plants. You've got greenhouses on 5 acres that are just going bonkers, and somebody's got to put a stop to it. That's all I got to say, except more bike lanes. Even though that went by me real quick.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's not something that we can, resolve for you today, but as I mentioned before, there will be an ordinance coming to the Planning Commission, and so kind of keep your eye on the agenda for when, and you could look at the county's website to see when that will be coming before us, and invite you back to provide.
Well, unfortunately, I work in Lodi, so I just get off it.
Yeah.
Well, you seen when I walked in. so-
Right. Well, you can
All right.
always provide written testimony, too.
Do you have the ability to look at the agenda? Do you go to the county website and see what's being?
I can now that I know it exists.
Well, you can
Little sign.
subscribe. You can actually, you can put your name in there. You'll get notices about when there's been new content added to the Planning Commission, and then you can go look, and it's like, oh, there's the agenda, right, Annette?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so that way you don't have to, it'll just automatically come to you when
All
there's
right.
a new posting.
Thank you. It's not
Peter, we
even
don't
far.
Thank you very much.
We don't have a date for.
We do not have a date yet.
Okay.
For-
Well, let me ask you, is there anyone else? No, okay, so.
You need
let's-
someone to fill in the last.
No, we don't. No, we don't, thank you.
So
though.
just a brief report.
Brief
on-
report.
On that topic. Tuesday, obviously, was the all-day board meeting that went till almost 8 o'clock. They did get some further direction from the board on some issues. One thing that they decided on was they were going to leave the dispensary provisions pretty much as they are. So we'll be looking at probably more applications for zone changing for C2. We've got at least one in-house one tried to be submitted yesterday, we rejected because it was incomplete.
You mean application for, from CP to,
Oh,
or
I'm sorry,
to CP?
yeah, to CP.
Yeah.
So,
So the board left that in place?
they left that in place.
Okay, the CP zone requirement, okay.
The, there were a whole range of different, growing scheme of, how, what zones are allowed to do what and what place, consistent with the state law. I'll be working with county council to craft the next iteration of the ordinance based on their direction. Then that will be scheduled for you. It will be going through the normal process because the urgency is no longer there, which means that you will be the first review body for that. And then
Lucky us.
your recommendation will be taken to the board. We will need, it's a project under CEQA, so we'll need to do some type of CEQA document on that. The issue that was just raised as far as noise, something that, from generators, something we will probably want to address. So I took a note of that so that when I meet with council, we'll see how we can address that issue. And try to make it work based on the board's direction. So I'm suspecting that maybe in 45 days or so, we might be getting something to you. So gird your loins.
Yeah, really, thank you.
There were about, I estimated 400 people in the audience, maybe more. So it was
Well
a long
attended.
day, well attended,
Yeah,
thank you,
yeah.
well attended meeting. And that's really about all I have as far as upcoming meetings. No meeting next week. I'm going to be at the annual Planning Directors Conference, and we don't have any other items on the agenda at this point. I was expecting that we would take 2 weeks, 2 meetings on
Boy, we
this.
fooled
So you
you.
fooled me. So I'm going to be scrambling to get something else to, keep things moving on the general plan. I don't want to have delays because I'm not ready. The next element that we have is the safety element. I'm needing extra help with that. Amy Augustine, who's under contract with the county, will be helping to review. There's a long list of requirements under the safety that a lot of state agencies weigh in on, and we need to be sort of technically accurate. We got a long checklist of information from CAL FIRE that frankly was very confusing and not very helpful, but we have to address each one of their comments, and if we don't accept their recommendations, we have to have a finding of why we didn't accept it. The problem is they weren't really made in ways that we could say, yes, this is in here, it's not. I'm just so scratching my head, I don't understand what you're saying here. It was very confusing, so Amy's going to help me with that. But that's going to take a little time to sort of work our way through all of those comments and making sure that we also meet the Department of Conservation, and there's a number of other state agencies that get to weigh in on the safety element. But we should have the technical background report, although there may be a few more things I'd like to add based on the discussion today from transportation and circulation. But other than that, other than trying to put it together and resolving computer problems with assembling the document, it's more or less ready to go. So we could revisit that at the next meeting coming up in March. I think March 3rd would be the next special meeting for the general plan. If I don't have anything ready by Wednesday, we'll probably skip that meeting as well and just have our regular meeting on the 10th.
Unless, I mean, if there were just a few revisions to the
The other thing
technical
is we do need
background report.
to, we've got a few revisions to technical background. Well, there's quite a lot of changes that we made based on the discussion we had back in
I mean, it could be
September.
that you could just do this one over again, and then there was a couple of other.
And then there are some things I need to bring back on conservation
Yeah,
and
that
open
were
space. So I'm
small.
hoping to
Yeah.
get those back together,
Right.
for you by Wednesday so that you have time to review it for
Right,
the third,
right.
for the
And even
third.
if there were sort of a few holes, I mean, that in the technical background report based upon circulation that we could just sort of resolve at the meeting to maybe a
Okay.
little bit.
All right.
That's another possibility.
So let's plan on that, then we'll have the revisions to the conservation open space, which I hopefully will wrap up tomorrow.
And circulation.
And then these changes come back, I'll make sure that someone from Public Works is available to talk about the issues you guys had on that, the two policies. That'll be enough to keep us busy.
All right.
And keep
Our
moving
next meeting
forward.
is 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
So next week is 2 weeks from now. No meeting next week.
So since the supervisors approved of keeping the dispensary ordinance, we will not be reviewing that?
Or is that part of?
Well, there will be some minor amendments to the dispensary ordinance to be consistent with state law as well as, so they interrelate to the other ordinance, the new provisions. That doesn't mean you can't recommend other changes.
Okay.
That will be your opportunity to look at, other changes you may make. They chose not to direct us to make those changes, any other changes, as a part of their direction to us. But you are the advisory body, and you could make a recommendation to the board in any way you see fit.
Okay.
All right, anything else? We're adjourned. See you in a few weeks. Thank you very much.